Chapter 362. Aya obviously has her own idea on how to change people's mind. Was it wrong to change people's mind? If so, then why did the world need to be enlightened? Wouldn't it be fine if they just let it be?
However, let alone the Western continent, even in 9 regions, the king's way of enlightenment was an indispensable part of any ruler.
Wasn't it natural to infect and enlighten people with the spirit of chivalry? However, she was not ready to debate with Wang Lu, because it was impossible for her to win, and even if she did, it would be meaningless. However, Wang Lu didn't say much.
Some things were far more powerful to see with one's eyes than to say with one's mouth.
This small city could not accommodate the weight of people's mind, so the next stop was Dragon City. Choosing Dragon City meant that their 1-month journey would finally come to an end. At this time, when Aya thought about it, she was both reluctant and relieved. She had already faintly understood what Wang Lu wanted to do. However, she believed that after arriving at Dragon City, the real knight of Bretonnia would let him understand that the spirit of chivalry was not illusory. She believed that the former knight of the Round Table, Bedivere, would not let her down. However, after arriving at Dragon City, what she saw and heard made her feel as if she had fallen into an ice cave. Everything seemed to be a replica of that remote town.
Only the scale of things was bigger, and on the surface it seemed to be more orderly.
However, greedy people were still greedy, and decaying people were still decaying. The past order was broken, and the newly established order was clothed with the spirit of chivalry. However, what they did was not much different from Holy Light religion. In the past, the church suppressed all 4 sides of Bretonnia, and the believers were a cut above the rest. Now, the ones who were a cut above the rest were the knights. Not long after the regime was restored, a strict class barrier was vaguely formed.
There was a clear boundary between the knight class and the civilian class, and the knights were also divided into different levels.
Different levels meant different benefits. High-level knights occupied the richest land, had hordes of servants, and had monstrous power. They were like overlords of a region. To some extent, the new Bretonnia was better than the Holy Light religion's rule. However, in some ways the situation was actually worse. Because in order to consolidate the regime, Holy Light religion took out the resources of other parishes to subsidize Bretonnia. However, many of the newly appointed knights simply began to exploit them. The replacement of the old regime and the new redistribution of interests were inevitable. However, everything should be fair and just, which was beneficial to the country. In the past, Aya fought everywhere and did everything she could to maintain the fairness of this process. She had once generously released an opponent who posed a great threat to her, but was defeated in the end, and gave him the respect he deserved. She had once severely punished those subordinates who tried to show off their strength after a victory and wantonly plunder. She had even set an example for them. Even though she was a supreme king, she still maintained a simple life. The knight's spirit allowed her to be like a spark that set the prairie ablaze, quickly setting off a storm in Bretonnia and establishing an unprecedented unified regime. Although for various reasons, the knight's kingdom fell apart shortly after it was established, she believed that the future of Bretonnia had been found. At least, she and the people who accompanied her in the struggle should be very clear about this point. Why? Late at night, Aya quietly entered Bedivere's study room. The master of Dragon City, who had just finished his day's work, also the current regent of Bretonnia, was startled and immediately stood up from his desk.
Aya.
Aya did not reveal herself, but asked in a cold voice, why? She didn't say a word, but Bedivere was very clear about where Aya's anger came from. Just now, he ended his meeting with a famous rich man in Bretonnia, who promised to give him a piece of land that was once controlled by Holy Light religion, along with the people on that land. Compared to Holy Light religion, that greedy and brutal rich man would only worsen the life of the people on that land. There were many similar things. Bedivere didn't know how much Aya had seen, but he didn't intend to cover it up. After a long silence, Bedivere finally said, "Because these are necessary compromises." Compromises? Aya's voice was full of loss and puzzlement. You shouldn't be a person who easily says the word compromise. Bedivere self-deprecatingly said, "Isn't it? A person who has been struggling at death's door for more than 100 years under the monstrous arrogance of the church, I'm afraid he's best at compromise. Otherwise, I would have followed the late king more than 100 years ago." This time, it was Aya's turn to be silent.
The spirit of chivalry requires me to stubbornly resist until the last moment, but in the end, I couldn't bear to see everything of the late king vanish into thin air.
Therefore, I compromised. Moreover, I continuously compromised. I surrendered to the opponent that I shouldn't surrender to, fell in love with the woman that I shouldn't fall in love with, and gave birth to the child that I shouldn't have. Today, compromise seems to have become my instinct. Bedivere was filled with emotion. However, the next moment, he changed the subject and unexpectedly took a tough stance. But in these more than 100 years, it also made me realize that compromise is an indispensable quality for a politician. Without my compromise, there would be no Dragon City today, and there would be no Bretonia today. Aya, you are the daughter of the Night King. Tell me, is my compromise wrong? Aya's voice was somewhat astringent. That was then, but now, Bedivere shook his head. It's the same. It's actually the same. Just now, although the rich man you saw is tyrannical and greedy, he has powerful influence and strength. The winter-cold city could be occupied without shedding a single drop of blood, and that's because of him. What he wanted was just a small piece of land and a few hundred laborers, but what he exchanged for was the lives of thousands of soldiers. So what can I do? For the sake of my own scrupulously abiding by the rules, should I let my soldiers risk their lives? Benevolence is also the basic creed of chivalry. Aya said, you should try to change him, to reform him. The human heart cannot be changed. Bedivere wearily said, unless we use a spell to turn everyone into a puppet, we must admit that the human heart is not as good as we think. Aya was surprised that Bedivere would say something similar to Wang Lu's. For a time, she didn't know what to say. After a long time, Aya tried to say, that's just because we're not strong enough. Bedivere was excited. Not strong enough? Yes, I'm just an ordinary knight of the Round Table, so I'm indeed not strong enough. But, isn't your father, the Night King, powerful enough? In his life, he never compromised. But what was the result? Was it because of the holy light religion's infiltration that people deserted you? How can you say that? Aya was unprecedentedly angry. Do you want to say that our scrupulous abiding by the rules are in vain? Bedivere deeply looked at her, and then dejectedly said, of course it's not in vain. Without the Night King's struggle, Bretonia would still be in a state of disunity, with endless infighting and being bullied. But these are two completely different things. The strength of a country lies in the strength of the people's heart. The people's heart is broken, shameless, and insatiable. However, before Aya could finish, Wang Lu patted her on the shoulder. Enough. Don't be hysterical like a literary and artistic young man. Aya glared at Wang Lu. Her legendary level pressure assaulted his face. Wang Lu's figure slightly swayed, but he didn't budge an inch. What? Are you going to wield your sword at me? Just like what you've done to the people around you? In a split second, Aya's anger congealed, and a bone-chilling chill spread all over her body. No, let's go back and talk. With that, Wang Lu pushed Aya and then turned around to leave. After the two of them left, Bedivere stood alone in his study. After a long time, he deeply bent down toward the direction where Aya went. Farewell, my king. You're wrong about one thing. On the way back, Wang Lu said to Aya, he is no longer your subordinate. In the more than 100 years of your absence, he is the pillar that truly supports the knight spirit in Bretonia. He is the one who single-handedly controls the situation in Bretonia and reunited the country from division to division in just a few months. And you're just the daughter of the Night King. What qualification do you have to criticize him in front of him? Don't you understand the principle of respecting the old and cherishing the young? Aya didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She was speechless. Perhaps, as she said, the changes in the past 100 years were somewhat difficult for her to adapt. Perhaps Bedivere has found his way, and perhaps there is a reason for his approach, but that has deviated from the knight's spirit. Wang Lu said, of course, because he is no longer a knight under your command, but a ruler. And as a ruler, he is far more qualified than you. At least, in Bretonia, although the knight spirit has been distorted, inspired by this slogan, the people's heart is indeed united, the country is indeed revived, and unprecedented prosperity is in the near future. At the same time, it will also be accompanied by unprecedented decay. That's the norm. Wang Lu said, there are black and white in people's heart. Even the most heinous people often have a flash of humanity. Saints will also have unbearable selfishness in their heart. Complex people form a complex society. This is an objective reality and law, like the sunrise and sunset. Don't be so obsessed with cleanliness. Aya thought for a long time.
It could be seen that the confusion in her heart was like a knot.
Perhaps that's just because I'm not strong enough?
Wang Lu was about to cry because of her stupidity.
Then how strong is strong?
According to the legend of the Western continent, in the era when gods walked the world, are those gods considered strong?
But I've never heard of anyone who could enlighten the people and make everyone become an immortal.
So, do you have to break through the legendary level, become a god, and then from the god world to the holy world, and then from the holy world to the supreme world? Only then can you come back to deal with the problem of the people's heart?
Aya was somewhat confused. What are your so-called holy world and supreme world? Oh, that's the content of the expansion pack. It's too early to tell you now. But in short, don't you think it's absurd that you have to be infinitely powerful to do something like that? Aya was even more confused. So, all these years, I've been doing useless work? How could it be useless? Without you, there would be no Bretonia today. But today's Bretonia doesn't need you. Wang Lu smiled. I know you don't understand, so I will seriously explain it to you.
Actually, the reason is very simple.
It's just that before you wouldn't listen, but now. Aya earnestly asked, please give me your advice. Chapter 363. Faced with Aya's sincere inquiry, Wang Lu rarely put down his usual calm expression and instead became somewhat embarrassed. In fact, it's not like I can give you pointers. I have never been omniscient and omnipotent, but it just so happens that your situation. I have personally witnessed a similar situation, so I can use it as a reference. What I say may not be right, but it should have some reference value. Aya listened carefully. Wang Lu said, right now, Bretonia does not need you. The reason is the same as when your kingdom fell apart. A country's society is a complicated whole, composed of many different people and different classes. As a ruler, you can't directly influence every single person.
You have led troops to war, so you should know that no matter how wonderful a strategy is, it can only be implemented through subtle tactics. In war, it is the officers who carry out your intentions, but in governing a country, it is the bureaucrats who carry out your intentions.
What you really need to face is not every person in Bretonia, but the bureaucrats closest to your class. Aya could not help but retort, people should not have such a clear distinction between superior and inferior. Wang Lu said, I know that you are the founder of the Knights of the Round Table system, and you have always advocated equality. But even in the heyday of the Knights of the Round Table, how many people were there? There are tens of thousands of qualified knights in Bretonia. How big of a table do you have to put all of them down?
In the end, you only have direct contact with 100 or so people in front of the Round Table.
They are your right-hand men to rule this country, but you don't care about their interests. The human heart pursues benefits. The knights follow you because of their faith, but they are not gods. They cannot live by faith alone. They also have to live and enjoy. In addition, as professionals, they needed a huge amount of resources to make themselves stronger. This was the instinct of being human. Of course, I know that you are a king with an almost perfect personality, but you can't ask everyone to be like you. Otherwise, there would be nothing to eat in this world. It was rare for Aya not to respond to this burden, but to silently and earnestly listen. Wang Lu continued. The knights follow you because they hope to get benefits from following you. They are eager for honor, eager to make contributions, and at the same time, eager to be treated in accordance with their achievements. Aya interrupted. I have never obstructed them from pursuing appropriate benefits, and I have never demanded that they lead an ascetic life. Yes, you didn't force it, so your regime can persist until the first unification of Bretonia. Otherwise, you can't even pull up the most basic troops. Wang Lu said. Your problem is that you didn't set an example. You are the Night King, the king who stands at the peak of billions of people. If you live a poor life, what do you want the people below you to do? You, as the king, get 1,000 silver coins a month. Can those ministers get 10,000 a month? They could only grit their teeth and take out 800, 500. But it's not even enough to live. Aya laughed. Do you want me to be extravagant because of this? Wang Lu said, apart from a few exceptions, have you ever seen a ruler who is not extravagant? Those poor monarchs were either overthrown by their subordinates, or they were about to become the monarchs of a subjugated kingdom. Poor monarchs meant that the entire bureaucratic system had gone haywire. So, according to your inference, there is no virtuous king in this world? Wang Lu said, to be precise, virtuous people are not suitable to be monarchs,
because the concept of morality is not applicable to different classes. At the same time, the spirit of chivalry is not suitable to guide the monarch to rule the country. Aya had actually been moved by Wang Lu a lot, but when she heard him mention the spirit of chivalry, the girl was immediately dissatisfied.
Do you want to reject the spirit of chivalry? Not reject, but put the spirit of chivalry in the right position.
If something is in the wrong position, even if it has no defects, it will only have the opposite effect.
Just like when you make a fish head pancake to look up at the starry sky, that is a naked tragedy. Using such an example to illustrate, Aya found it slightly easier to accept.
So, where do you think the position of the spirit of chivalry should be?
Wang Lu said, it's very simple. Put it on the altar. The spirit of chivalry emphasizes fairness, dedication, bravery, and so on.
These are all good qualities, and when it comes to educating and guiding people, it is nothing more than that.
But idols are idols, and reality is reality. Aya said, do you mean to deceive everyone? You say fair and just on the mouth, but in fact, you are selfish and insatiable? Deceive?
Wang Lu smiled.
No promise is not deceiving.
As long as you don't claim that the spirit of chivalry has been fully popularized in Bretonia, and the people can use the spirit of chivalry to strictly demand all the ruling classes, it is not deceiving.
It should be said that the spirit of chivalry does not exist in reality, and has already been realized.
It is a goal that we need to constantly strive for.
Isn't that enough to explain it? In fact, we are indeed working hard for it.
Although the reality is still far from the ideal, a unified Bretonia is always closer to the ideal than a Bretonia that is exploited and broken down by the church, isn't it?
Seeing Aya was silent, Wang Lu added, using the military analogy that you are good at, let's say that you now encounter an enemy that you can't defeat.
Do you want to directly rush forward and fight to the death? Or do you want to step by step and accumulate advantages little by little until the final decisive battle?
During this period, you may win or lose, and compromise and retreat are inevitable.
Aya somewhat tiredly asked. But how long will it take to truly realize the prosperity of the spirit of chivalry?
Wang Lu rhetorically asked, if I say 10 years is enough, will you believe it? I know you can't wait to see that day, but you have to clearly realize that you have already done what you can. You have created an unprecedented foundation for Bretonia, but your role will end here. Doing more is just pulling up seedlings to help them grow. Aya slightly nodded, as if she had accepted Wang Lu's suggestion. Wang Lu did not urge her and quietly accompanied her to walk in the alleys on the periphery of Dragon City. The hustle and bustle of the city was isolated by layers upon layers of high walls, creating a small tranquility. After an unknown amount of time, Aya somewhat sighed with relief and seemed to want to say something. However, at this time, a muffled cry suddenly sounded in front of them.
Aya's eyes narrowed, and then her figure flickered.
In a flash, she arrived at the source of the sound. Wang Lu sighed and quickly caught up with her. In a dilapidated house, he saw a young girl crying helplessly.
The cause of the matter was very simple.
They used to be merchants who provided Snow Mountain spring water to the church. Later, when the church was expelled, they suffered a calamity. His father and mother were judged as traitors who supported the church. Although their lives were not in danger, the family property that they had accumulated for decades was almost completely plundered. Under grief and indignation, the two made an extreme choice, leaving behind only a young daughter and a little bit of property that was barely enough for her to live. Unfortunately, the young woman was never familiar with the affairs of the world, and her parents' inheritance was quickly cheated out. Now, it was even difficult for her to survive. Wang Lu, is this kind of sin something that must be tolerated on the way forward? Wang Lu did not answer, because Aya actually did not need an answer. Wang Lu, I think there is always something I can do in this country.
Perhaps, as you said, I am not suitable to be a king, but I am still a knight, and I can do what a knight should do.
Wang Lu asked, single-handedly and chivalrously?
Wandering in Bretonia, taking care of all the injustice in the world, beheading all the heartless and unjust people in the world?
Relying on your identity as the Night King, or rather, the daughter of the Night King, to fight against the strict system? Aya, this is not the spirit of a knight, but a knight-errant who violates the law with martial arts.
Once or twice is fine, but sooner or later, you will find that the sword in your hand is aimed at the huge country that you have established.
And the knights who still have reverence for you will unknowingly stand on the opposite side of you. Do you really want to see that scene? Aya's whole body trembled and she was extremely unwilling. Do you want me to do nothing? You can do anything, as long as you can bear the consequences.
From your point of view, this is the country that you have established so you can do whatever you want to it.
But I guess no matter what you do, you will not get a satisfactory result.
Wang Lu helplessly said. So, do you understand why most of the immortal cultivators in 9 regions are not too involved in the secular world? In 9 regions, there are very few cultivators above the king pill stage who directly interfered with the affairs of the mortal world, because they couldn't afford to. The number of cultivators in 9 regions, relative to the mortal world, is already 1 in 10,000, or even less. The Wanxian League has created so many shitty things, so the mortal world could only be more chaotic by 10,000 times. A large part of the reason for the immortal cultivators to seek detachment is that the chaos of the mortal world is really unbearable.
You see, I set up the wisdom sect, and although I am the sect leader, I am only remotely commanding it. The ones who are deeply involved in it are the several deputy sect leaders. Because the involvement is too deep, even I, a professional adventurer, would be in a mess.
Aya didn't speak again. Wang Lu patted her on the shoulder and didn't say anything more.
Aya was never a fool. When she became famous, she knew better than most people in the world what she wanted to do. In fact, Wang Lu didn't think that he was much better than Aya. His biggest advantage was detachment. Aya has been deeply immersed in Bretonia, unable to extricate herself. Otherwise, with her wide knowledge, she wouldn't need others to remind her about these things. And now, what should be said has been said. Next, he could only patiently wait for Aya to figure it out. Next, Wang Lu no longer stuck to Aya's side. Instead, he gave her enough time and space to think about it. Some things needed to be left alone. However, 3 days later, when Wang Lu finished his short trip and returned to the agreed inn with Aya, he found that Aya had disappeared. Standing at the door of the inn's bedroom, Wang Lu was stunned. Did she get abducted by human traffickers? With that, Wang Lu felt a burst of disappointment. He couldn't help but put down the travel souvenir in his hand, the honey wine that Aya loved to drink, which was added with a special elixir. This was the last resort that Wang Lu prepared for Aya. If this silly girl still couldn't figure it out, then he could only let her figure it out in other places. Unfortunately, things were really hard to predict. Perhaps Aya really belonged to the Western continent, so no matter what, he couldn't bring her back to 9 regions. Chapter 364. Traveling alone in the Western continent was not a happy journey. Wang Lu searched for 2 days in Dragon City, but he couldn't find any trace of Aya. The Night King seemed to have evaporated from the face of the earth, leaving no trace behind. Even with Wang Lu's strategic ability, he was helpless. Of course, considering that Aya now had legendary-level power, if she deliberately wanted to hide, with Wang Lu's current strength, it was impossible for him to find her. Since he didn't want to meet her, then there was no need to force it. Wang Lu forced a smile to convince himself to accept the reality, and then silently embarked on his return journey. Because he didn't want to leave like a stray dog, Wang Lu didn't rush his journey. Along the way, he could also witness the changes in Bretonia, and even the entire Western continent. Bedivere was a qualified ruler. His performance was so good that it even exceeded Wang Lu's expectation. Wang Lu had long calculated that the former Knight of the Round Table, who had been dormant for 100 years, was not simple. Therefore, after the overall situation was settled, he deliberately transferred Aya away, in order to let Bedivere have a reasonable chance of ascending to the throne, cutting off the possibility of Aya ascending to the throne. Bedivere's accomplishment was very beautiful. Not only did he successfully control the overall situation in Bretonia as the regent, but he also used Aya's prestige to consolidate his own authority. His method was so beautiful that if he didn't repent every night in front of the portrait of the Night King, Wang Lu would have suspected that he was the evil mastermind behind the scenes. Bedivere's loyalty to the Night King was beyond doubt. However, as a ruler, his enthusiasm for power was not trivial. In the past 100 years, he used various extraordinary methods to continue the inheritance of the Bretonia Dragon Clan and the Night King. And this 100 years of special experience was enough to change anyone. What really made Wang Lu have a whole new level of respect for Bedivere was on the 5th day after Aya's disappearance. At that time, Wang Lu casually walked on the land of Bretonia and unknowingly came to Golden Flash Town. Not surprisingly, he didn't see Aya's trace. In fact, even if he could guess Aya's whereabouts, with Aya's current strength, she could detect his approach and then perfectly hide herself. Just to reminisce the past, Wang Lu still chose the century-old shop.
He was surprised to find that the girl who previously served him, Nice, was still there.
Wang Lu remembered that Nis was selected to join the Dragon City Guard along with him. When Nis saw Wang Lu, she was also very surprised. She explained that she was indeed in Dragon City, but recently, she saw some things in Dragon City, which made her realize that the life in Golden Flash Town was more suitable for her. She was a Dragon City Guard, and she also appeared in the 2 decisive battles. Although she was just a bystander, she also had some meritorious service. Guard Dragon City, Guard Dragon City. She also planned to leave on the same day.
But because she stayed Dragon City continent, but because she wanted to stay.
She Dragon City, Star City. He saw Aya, the radiant Aya that made it hard for people to look directly at her. The girl was bathed in the radiance, wearing a bright silver armor that did not lose its elegance, and holding a sword that symbolized the royal power of Bretonia, the stone sword. Her face was brimming with the majesty of a king. Wherever she went, people would worship her. In front of and behind Aya, there were hundreds of Dragon City guards neatly lined up. Seeing such Aya, Wang Lu was shocked like a stormy sea. Because he never thought that after being missing for several days, Aya actually chose to wallow in the mire with Bedivere. Otherwise, perhaps she could openly walk in the territory of Bretonia, but she shouldn't be able to mobilize the Dragon City guards around her. Could it be that she chose to cooperate with Bedivere? How could Bedivere unite? This kind of development was completely incomprehensible. But soon, Wang Lu found that there were too many doubtful points about this Aya. Although the appearance was exactly the same, and even the temperament was quite similar, but after being with Aya day and night, Wang Lu was always able to detect some differences. Especially when Aya swaggered around in Golden Flash Town and then stayed in the most luxurious inn, Wang Lu saw even more doubtful points. For example, Tisk, there's clearly something fishy about this breast size. The real one has a broad chest, okay? Moreover, if you look carefully, her height is a bit higher. She's already so old, and she's also a spirit of the brave departed. How could she possibly grow up? Moreover, how could the real Aya not have any reaction when he came within 200 steps of her? Finally, it was the belated former Archbishop Rowan who allowed Wang Lu to determine her identity. This former high-ranking member of the church, during the Battle of Dragon City, resolutely rebelled and was exposed as a member of the Priory of Zion, which finally allowed him to protect himself in the subsequent turmoil. However, he was barely able to protect himself, and no longer had his former glory. This time, he came here in a low-key manner, alone, and even the Dragon City guards ignored him. However, his appearance allowed Wang Lu to see through Aya's real situation. So that's how it is.
There's no need for Faceless One to come forward. The Priory of Zion has already cooperated with Bedivere.
For the Priory of Zion, this was a natural choice.
Once the two cooperated, Joan of Arc, who was hidden by the Priory of Zion, would have a place to shine.
The Aya before him was just a fake good, which greatly disappointed Wang Lu, but also made him admire Bedivere's means. With Joan of Arc, Aya's existence was irrelevant, because Bedivere's weakest link had been made up. As a former Knight of the Round Table, his identity was naturally weaker than Aya's. Even if Aya was just the daughter of the Night King, she was still more suitable than him to hold the political power. At the same time, his beloved woman was the church's holy woman, which also cast a shadow over his reputation. Therefore, Bedivere could at most serve as the regent, but the king's position was hard to reach. If Aya was determined to fight against him, it would also be troublesome. Therefore, he directly used Joan of Arc. Needless to say, this marionette was the prop that he put on the stage to establish his reputation. At the same time, it also put an end to Aya's idea of using her identity to fight against him. From a political point of view, although it was not very open and aboveboard, it was absolutely effective. As for the Caliban, it was difficult for Wang Lu to distinguish whether it was real or fake. However, most of it was fake, because the real Aya could not possibly abandon her sword. And with the current state of Bretonia, it could not do anything to the legendary level Aya. Seeing Joan of Arc, Wang Lu completely lost interest in Bretonia. This included Bedivere, a man who once impressed him with his loyalty, who was also swept into the category of not worthy of his attention. All those who were obsessed with power struggles were fools. This was Wang Lu's consistent understanding. And since this land had been controlled by fools, it was no longer worthy of his attention. As for Aya, He couldn't find her anywhere. It was clear that she didn't want to see him, so why should he force her? After a few decades, when Wang Lu had reached the king pill yuanying and deity stage, he would revisit this place. At that time, even if he had to use force, he would make Aya take the pill. After bidding farewell to Nis and Golden Flash Town, Wang Lu no longer had any reluctance to leave. Alone, he went to the eastern part of the continent, ready to return to 9 regions. This journey took less than a week. When he arrived at the eastern part, the city master of Deep Earth City, Haddock, personally received him and arranged a special ship to send him across the endless sea. After asking in detail, Wang Lu learned that he had a very resounding reputation in the eastern city-states. It turned out that the story of him plotting to kill 2 legendary, 1 quasi-legendary, and 5 archbishops of the Holy Light religion in the king's treasure house had spread. Although there were too many coincidences, Wang Lu still became the hero of the eastern people. If not for Wang Lu's determination to leave, Sir Haddock intended to take Wang Lu on a 1-month tour of the eastern region. When he arrived at the dock, Wang Lu found that the eastern city-state's courteous reception for him, the hero, was absolutely sincere. Because there was a powerful warship covered with alchemy products and high-level arrays. Its value could not even be measured by currency units such as magic coins. Moreover, he was the only distinguished guest on this ship. At the door of the luxuriously decorated bedroom, 2 rows of beautiful and sexy maids were respectfully waiting for him. The expression on their faces was moving and wooden, as if they were waiting for his order or pleasure at any time. However, Wang Lu was not in the mood for pleasure. He walked straight past the maids, pushed open the bedroom door, and casually threw his luggage aside. Then, he was scared by the person behind the door and took 3 steps back. Aya. The person behind the door was Aya, wearing a simple but dignified dress. She sat upright at the desk in the middle of the bedroom with a gentle smile on her face. Wait a minute. You're not Aya, you're Jean d'Arc? From the subtle difference between the woman's eyebrows and the obviously different curve of her chest, Wang Lu recognized the other party's true identity. However, at this meeting, Wang Lu's mood was very bad, because the pleasant surprise that had just welled up in his heart was quickly replaced by a sense of loss. And between the ups and downs, he really could not find any pleasure. Bedivere, are you out of your mind? Isn't it good to be the king of Bretonia? Why do you have to provoke me? Believe it or not, I'll go back and use 3 months to make your regime collapse? For a cultivator who was not even a king pill level cultivator to say such generous words, it was usually just a joke. However, if this joke was said by Wang Lu, perhaps Bedivere himself wouldn't be able to laugh. However, Jean actually smiled. I haven't seen you for a few days. You really don't recognize me? How could Wang Lu have a good face toward this kind of puppet? I don't look at the face. I only look at the chest. Why don't you show me your chest? The next moment, a cold aura filled the air, causing Wang Lu to tremble. Then a thought flashed through his mind. F***ck me, dead chef, it's really you? I haven't seen you for a long time, so you went to get breast implants? The woman in front of him helplessly sighed. Think again. Wang Lu calmed down, carefully looked at the other party again, and then curiously asked, Is this the fusion of your body and soul? Did you snatch Bedivere's trump card for your own use? It's mine, why would I snatch it? Aya shook her head. I just had an open and honest talk with him, and then made a deal. Deal? Wang Lu curiously repeated, because in his impression, Aya was a person who would never compromise in the name of a deal. Aya said, I took back this body, and from then on, I laid the foundation of his rule. Laid the foundation of his rule. A flash of inspiration flashed through Wang Lu's mind. He incredulously asked, You left the Caliban sword to him? Aya smiled. Interestingly, he actually managed to pick up the sword in the stone. Then, her smile turned a bit bitter. Perhaps in the Caliban sword's view, he is more suitable to be the king of Bretonia. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu was surprised. That Jean that I saw in Golden Flash Town that day, could it be? Aya nodded. It's Bedivere's incarnation. He's a high-order profession, so it's not difficult for him to transform his body. Moreover, he has the most professional makeup artist around him, so the acting is almost flawless. Remembering that day when his eyes repeatedly lingered on the other party's chest, Wang Lu only felt that his vision was blurred for a moment. After a long time, Wang Lu finally recovered. What about you? As a knight, are you really going to hand over your sword to others? Aya said, the Caliban sword is no longer my sword. I have found a more suitable sword. With that, she slowly stood up, pulled Wang Lu's hand, and then before he could react, gently hugged him. I've already found my Excalibur. Epilogue. Eat as much as you can. Being hugged by Aya, Wang Lu was stiff for a quarter of an hour. It was not until Aya let go of him with a blushing face that Wang Lu shook his head, opened his mouth, and then froze for a long time before he said, the feeling of my chest is really different from before. The cold breath made Wang Lu feel a great danger. Therefore, he changed the subject. Joan of Arc, you look different from your spirit of the brave. Aya said, when I pulled out the Caliban sword, I got the blessing of the Dragon Clan. Since then I will not age nor grow up. But at that time, I was only 14 years old. When I turned into a spirit of the brave, my body no longer enjoyed the power of blessing. During the time when I was out, I gained some growth, and that's how I am now. Wang Lu sighed with emotion. In other words, your original body is not a congenital disability? It's just a lack of growth? You really can't judge a book by its cover. Aya suddenly felt a trace of remorse for her behavior of throwing away the Caliban sword. In short, are you going to repent, make up your mind to abandon your fantasy, and become a hands-off shopkeeper? Hands-off shopkeeper. Aya faintly smiled. These days, I've been to a lot of places in Bretonia and met a lot of people. In a village, I saw a little boy and a little girl. The two of them are childhood sweethearts. However, the boy is a descendant of a knight, while the little girl is an orphan who grew up in the church. After the withdrawal of Holy Light religion, the two of them experienced an earth-shattering impact. The little girl almost faced a disaster. But at this moment, the boy, who has always been regarded as a promising future, insisted on standing in front of the little girl, not hesitating to shelter her from the wind and rain. The little girl asked him why, and he said that he is a knight, and his dream is to become the Night King. Although this dream is really very immature, seeing him, I realize that the true spirit of chivalry will never die. Wang Lu smiled and asked, perhaps that child is just a few examples. Aya pointed to herself. Few examples? Am I not one of them? When the country was torn apart, I, who was willing to stand up, was just a few examples. After a pause, Aya seriously said, moreover, I don't think I really left Bretonia. No matter when I close my eyes, I seem to be able to hear the call of the people in Bretonia. Wang Lu imagined it for a moment and felt that it was quite creepy. Because how many couples would suddenly call out his name when they were having sex? Wouldn't that be terrible? However, since Aya was enjoying it, he just let her be. In short, no matter what she thought, her willingness to go back was more important than anything else. In Bretonia, I have done everything that I can do. However, in 9 regions, there are still some things that I haven't finished yet. I thought that I would never have the chance to set foot on the land of 9 regions again. But, Aya said with some sadness and some nostalgia, after boarding this ship, I feel like I'm going home. However, after saying this, Aya cheered up. Since I'm going back to 9 regions, then I'll resume my old business. What? Wang Lu was surprised. Did this child really want to retaliate against the society after losing the throne? Aya said, when I returned to Bretonia this time, I seriously consulted several court chefs and improved my skills, so you can rest assured. It's because you're the court chefs of Bretonia that I'm not at ease. However, in the face of Aya's painstaking work, did Wang Lu have any other choice? Aya confidently smiled as she left the bedroom. After a while, she brought out a meticulously prepared dish. This time, Aya's culinary skills seemed to have improved. On the plate, there was a roasted chicken with golden yellow skin, exuding the fragrance of meat and wine. Wine roasted chicken, do you want to try it? Wang Lu tried a piece and felt that it was fragrant and smooth, which was actually a rare delicacy. Of course, there was still a gap compared to the real court chefs, but compared with her previous dark cuisine, it was really like heaven and earth. It must be said that the taste of this wine-roasted chicken seemed to be a bit wrong. Really? Aya was somewhat surprised as she tasted a piece. It's true, it's not the same as the one I used when I was practicing. It's strange, I'm still using the top-grade mead you brought. The quality should be better than the one I used before. Wang Lu only felt an explosion in his mind. What kind of wine did you say? It's the mead you brought. How did the wine end up in your hands?
Wang Lu quickly went to the door and searched for the bag he threw at the door. Sure enough, the mead inside was gone. In order to ensure the effectiveness of the fortified mead, once it was fortified, it could not be casually put back into the mustard seed bag. Therefore, unexpectedly, it was taken away by Aya.
You didn't put it in the mustard seed bag.
I saw the bottle cap was open, so I smelled it and found that it could still be used. Speaking to this, Aya was somewhat worried.
Could it be that it can't be used?
Wang Lu took a deep breath, calmed his mood, and then revealed a smile.
There's nothing that can't be used. I just want to say, let's finish this roasted chicken. Chapter 365.
The long sea journey was like a boundless dream. When he woke up, the silhouette of the 9 regions was already in sight. Standing on the side of the ship, Wang Lu felt that the half a month of crossing the endless sea seemed long, but it seemed to pass in the blink of an eye, which made his heart somewhat reluctant. Of course, if he really had to drift on the sea for another half a month, that would be unbearable. The condition of the ship was impeccable. It had the best hull design, the most exquisite decoration, the cabin was filled with Western continent luxury goods, more than 20 charming and affectionate maids, and the rest of the gold, silver, and jewelry. Such extravagant treatment could not be enjoyed by the king of a country in the Western continent. Wang Lu really enjoyed the treatment of a hero in the eastern city-states. It was unbearable. The food on the ship was too miserable, and no matter how he thought about it, this was a Western continent monster. It was not the ghost chef Aya's fault. She confidently said that she would cook during the voyage. However, after the first day's roast chicken, Aya had no other dishes. In fact, she only learned that one dish, and after the mead was used up, she couldn't make a second roast chicken. It was purely because after Aya succeeded in making roast chicken, she thought that she had comprehended the essence of cooking, and that she was overconfident. However, when Wang Lu didn't check the next day, he saw the look up at the starry sky improved eye, look up at the starry sky improved too, and other unknown substances, which was simply an eye-opener. Wang Lu repeatedly praised that Aya should not be a knight, but a national alchemist. If she was given a kitchen and enough ingredients, sooner or later, she would be able to synthesize the philosopher's stone. In this regard, Aya was deeply frustrated, but how could she be dispirited by this little setback? On the contrary, she was inspired and courageously moved forward. For Wang Lu, on the 3rd day, the situation became more and more serious. After several failed attempts, Aya simply began to use trial and error to find the feeling of cooking. After wasting half of the stored ingredients in the cabin, her alchemy improved once again, and she was only a few steps away from mastering the human body. Unable to bear it any longer, Wang Lu used his chopsticks to draw a 3-inch sword defense, isolating the dozens of unknown substances that Aya served, and angrily rebuked, "Aya, if you have the ability, have a taste and see what the hell is this? Your ingredients are not precise, your seasoning is immoral, your control of the fire is not good, and you have no strength in turning the ladle. If you don't have any skills, do you think you're worthy of wasting the best ingredients on the ship? You must be daydreaming." Aya was indifferent and did not speak, but the determination in her eyes did not retreat. Therefore, Wang Lu's tragedy could only continue. It stood to reason that in this kind of situation, the worst that could happen was to replace someone else. The 20 maids on the ship were not only charming and affectionate, but also good at cooking. Any one of them, even if they closed their eyes to cook, would be 10,000 times more reliable than Aya. However, Wang Lu could not be replaced. Because Aya's return to 9 regions was basically proposed by him. And for Aya, she gave up her Night King identity and the sword in the stone to accompany Wang Lu back. For a woman to do this for you, what was the big deal about eating a few of her great sage stones? Fortunately, Wang Lu finally found a way to survive. Because even if Aya had 1,000 faults, at least there was one thing that was reliable. Her knife skill was absolutely at the Grandmaster level. Of course, this was also nonsense. How could a legendary level swordsman's skill in wielding a knife and wielding a spear be bad? Therefore, Wang Lu simply changed the recipe to sashimi feast. In addition to all kinds of fresh fish sashimi, other ingredients on the ship could also be made into sashimi, such as ham sashimi, sausage sashimi, pumpkin sashimi, broccoli sashimi, and bread sashimi, which gave Wang Lu a way to survive. However, the days of eating sashimi every day were really bitter for Wang Lu, so when he saw the land, the silhouette of 9 regions was like a pot of fragrant streaky pork. Even if there was a small problem with the route, which deviated from the proper direction and didn't see the harbor, Wang Lu was still full of joy. In any case, for someone like him who was close to King Pil, it was not so important whether there was a harbor or not. As the ship continued to approach, Wang Lu seemed to smell the aroma of meat. Moreover, it was roasted dog meat with just the right amount of heat. A moment later, Wang Lu, who was standing on the side of the ship, was taken aback. Because he had already seen that on the beach, there was a plainly dressed woman who was boldly fiddling with a pot. Inside the pot, large pieces of meat were bubbling with a tempting aroma. It was a pot of braised dog meat. And that woman was impressively Zen Master Guru Xueqi. Although he whispered to himself, Xueqi, who was several miles away, looked up and smiled at him. "I've been waiting for you for a long time. You're finally here." With that, her figure moved, and together with the pot, she boarded the ship. Her speed was so fast that it made people click their tongues. "Although you're not early, you've come at the right time. I've been waiting for you on this beach for half a month. I just caught a black dog and cooked it, and then you came. Since you're here, let's eat together. After eating, we'll go back together. Your master is going crazy waiting for you." As Xueqi spoke, she put the pot on the deck. Behind her, her hand took out a pile of bowls, plates, and chopsticks from her mustard seed bag. Other than giving a set to Wang Lu, she also handed them to Aya, who was standing silently behind Wang Lu. "Aya? I've heard of you for a long time. This is the first time we've met. Do you want to try my cooking?" Aya was stunned for a moment. She frowned and actually waved her hand to refuse. With Aya's temperament, she rarely behaved noble and elegant. In Wang Lu's view, this refusal was purely because they were in the same trade. Compared to her alchemical products, this pot of dog meat was enough to subvert her worldview and explode her obviously distorted cognitive world. Xueqi didn't care. He picked up his own bowl and chopsticks and began to eat the meat. While eating, he said to Wang Lu, "In view of the fact that the two of us snatched the food a bit fast, I'll make it short. Previously in the Western continent, you asked for an indefinite length of marriage leave. Your sex elders sympathized with your hard work in the Western continent, so they allowed it. However, as you can guess, after this trip to the Western continent, things will pile up like a mountain. Moreover, your role in the Western continent is by no means dispensable. Therefore, there are a lot of things that you need to participate in. If you drag it for 10 days or half a month, that's fine. But if you drag it for a month, the people in 9 regions will inevitably become impatient. Right now, there are a lot of people waiting for you at the place where your ship may dock. You're lucky to meet me, so we can eat a pot of dog meat." Xueqi said, put away the pot that he and Wang Lu had already divided, stood up and said, "Then let's get ready to go. I'm afraid it's about time." Wang Lu curiously asked, "What about time? Moreover, what about my ship?" "Don't worry, you won't be lost. Later, the Wanxian League will send someone to help you put it away. In short, you just need to come with me." While speaking, Xueqi has already buckled Wang Lu's wrist. However, at the same time, her wrist was also buckled by Aya. Seeing Aya's serious face, Wang Lu was afraid that she misunderstood something, so he explained, "This is my master's friend. I don't have an affair with her." Inwardly she thought, even if I have an affair with Xueqi, you don't have to watch over me like this, right? Aren't you, this ghost chef, a bit too broad? However, Aya ignored him. Her eyes kept wandering around Xueqi's body, and she became more and more suspicious. Could it be that you are?" Before she could finish, Xueqi has already said, "This poor monk is dog meat. This is the first time we meet. See you later." With that, her figure moved and disappeared without a trace, bringing Wang Lu along with her. Aya was slightly stunned. Although with her strength, she could completely stop them, she didn't do so. After a while, Aya couldn't help but laugh. "So that's how it is, it's you." At the same time, Wang Lu only felt a blur in front of him. He didn't know how far he had been dragged by Zen Master Guru to a noisy place. When he looked around, he was immediately surprised. What is this place? Why are there so many people? A large number of people wasn't scary. What was scary was that almost all of them were famous people, not common people. The great elder of Kunlun's sect, the 10,000 Arts sect's abbot, the Shengjing sect's inspector. Any one of them had a resounding reputation, similar to the Spirit Sword sect's Heavenly Sword Hall elder. And at this time, Wang Lu could see hundreds of them. So many people at this time, gathered on a wide grassland, which seemed to be crowded. And in the sky, there were 5 floating golden platforms, looking down from above, majestic. After observing for a while, Wang Lu finally remembered this place and, incidentally, cleared up everything.
Southern Heaven region? The group of immortal tombs? Are they going to King open the immortal tombs? The opening ceremony is being held? That's why this place is a gathering of heroes? And then I, as the biggest hero of the Western expedition, should speak on the stage? People can't find me, but they can't just postpone the opening ceremony because of a disciple who hasn't reached the level of King Pill. So many people are very anxious, right? Xueqi clapped his hands from the side and said with a smile, "Being with you saves me the effort to explain.
Now that you know, then you," before his voice fell, an elder suddenly appeared in front of Wang Lu and grabbed his hand.
"It's finally here.
If not, your speech would have been taken by Shengjing sect's disciple." Wang Lu was in a trance that he didn't even see the elder's face before he was grabbed by him. Fortunately, from the voice, he could still recognize that it was his third uncle, Feng He. Being grabbed by Feng He, Wang Lu's vision blurred, and then he was already in mid-air. Clouds and mist curled up under his feet, and before his eyes, the bright golden platform had been transferred to the golden platform in the sky. There were still a lot of people on the golden platform, and their weight was obviously higher than that of the elders below the platform. Wang Lu's eyes swept across them, and his breathing paused for a moment. The leaders of the 5 super sects of the Wanxian League were all here. The leader of Lingjian School, Feng Yin, Shengjing sect's He Tu, 10,000 Arts sect's Tian Luan, Kunlun sect's Xueqi, and Royal Soldier sect's War God Kuqin. Among them, Kuqin of Royal Soldier sect was the most unfamiliar. He wore heavy armor and an airtight mask, which didn't reveal his true face. In fact, even his portrait was covered in a mask, which made him look very mysterious. In fact, since the fall of the previous leader of Royal Soldier sect, unparalleled god of war, this sect, which was scolded as a mad dog by many people, had been low-key for decades. Probably only the opening of the group of immortal tombs could lead them to appear. When Wang Lu observed the crowd, he also became the focus of everyone's attention. What he did in the Western continent was known by all the high-level people present. Toward this mysterious lead disciple of Spirit Sword sect, several Supremes of Unity stage cast their attention on him. The invisible pressure brought by these invisible eyes was enough to shock the ordinary Taoist Master King Pill. However, Wang Lu didn't seem to be aware of it. Because beside Wang Lu, the woman in white with a ponytail pressed her hand on the emerald green bamboo sword at her waist, sheltering her disciple from the wind and rain. At the same time, the voice of Feng Yin Taoist master sounded. "Okay, our lead disciple Wang Lu has arrived in time. Should the agenda be restored to the original and Wang Lu will make the third speech?" As he spoke, his eyes looked directly at the Taoist in the middle of the golden platform, which was also the most important person here, Supreme He Tuesday. He too was silent for a moment, nodded his head, and then waved his hand toward the side of the golden platform. A woman who had been sitting cross-legged stood up and respectfully retreated. That woman was a disciple of Shengjing sect and the original speaker to replace Wang Lu. Although no one knew what she did in the Western continent, for her to be qualified to replace Wang Lu's speech, it was obvious that she also had amazing achievements. Unfortunately, her shining opportunity was robbed by Wang Lu, just like a bride who was humiliated and miserable. However, the woman's eyebrows were indifferent. When she got up, she looked back and smiled, like a spring breeze. "That's Qianghua," Wang Wu timely introduced, the lead disciple of Shengjing sect. Chapter 366. Qianghua. Upon hearing this name, Wang Lu felt like it was like a thunderclap reverberating in his ears. In 9 regions, there might be people who didn't know about Lingjian School, but there were not many people who didn't know about Qianghua. As the lead disciple of Shengjing sect, Qianghua had been dazzling ever since her debut. Everyone's eyes were focused on her. Not only because she was the last disciple of Hichu Daoren, but also a strong competitor for the next sect leader of Shengjing sect, but also because she was as beautiful as a fairy, devastatingly beautiful. In any place, beautiful women were more likely to catch people's eyes. not to mention a beautiful woman with a promising future and superb immortal method. Originally, Lu Li and Zhu Shiyao from Lingzhen School and Zhou Mumu from Kunlun sect all had similar characteristics. However, compared to Qianghua, each of them had their own defects. Zhu Shiyao was unreasonable, losing her indifference. Lu Li was naive, losing her childishness. Zhou Mumu was outspoken, losing her impatience. Each of them had their own defects. Qianghua, on the other hand, was mellow and free, perfect and flawless. In any point, she was not the most outstanding. She never had the amazing record of killing the 12 blood cloud demons when she was still in the foundation establishment stage like Lu Li. Like Wang Lu, who repeatedly fought against the senior cultivators, cleverly used all the resources, and regarded the stage gap as nothing, she also never created a miracle. Zhu Shiyao was known to be invincible in the same stage, so she didn't dare to say that she could win. However, step by step, after nearly 20 years of cultivation, she had steadily stood on the stage of Taoist Master of King Pill. Yes, Qianghua was already a Taoist Master of King Pill, which Wang Lu realized the moment he locked eyes with her. The threshold between the King Pill and the non-King Pill could be deep or shallow. For many mediocre people, achieving the King Pill was nothing more than advancing one level of magical power, nothing to worry about. However, for a few people, the stage before and after King Pill was completely different, and the gap between people before and after this threshold was even greater. When Wang Lu was in the Grand Cloud Mountain, he dared to take 1 or 2 moves from Tiger King of Yuanying stage. However, even if he had the strength of Peak Shoot on stage, he didn't dare to say that his non-phase sword defense would be foolproof in front of Qianghua. For Qianghua to achieve the King Pill in 20 years, he didn't dare to say that it was unprecedented, but the speed was still amazingly fast. What was more frightening was that her foundation was solid. Once she succeeded in the King Pill, she would be reborn. In the past, people estimated that Qianghua's added value according to Wang Lu's method of adding value was about 14 or 15, which was close to Lu Li. However, now, Lu Li, who hadn't passed the King Pill test, no longer had the qualification to compete with her. In addition, what Wang Lu cared about the most was that pair of eyes that seemed to be able to speak. At her master's request, Qianghua got up and left. Her eyes only met with Wang Lu's for a moment, but Wang Lu seemed to hear Qianghua's gentle voice in his ear. "I've long heard of your reputation. Today, I finally know that your reputation is not in vain. I'm looking forward to your report." Her courteous attitude greatly changed Wang Lu's impression of Qianghua. Before this, he had never met Qianghua, but he had long heard of her reputation. People said that she was modest and courteous, gentle and elegant, like a flower on a high mountain. However, according to the news and public opinion, especially the usual practice of Shangjing sect, Wang Lu automatically analyzed her as being pretentious and sanctimonious. However, at this time, he found out that his previous thinking was biased. Qianghua, this person, seemed to have her own way of doing things. She was not the exquisite packaging product of Shangjing sect's huge propaganda organization. However, Wang Lu didn't have the time to consider Qianghua. At this time, on the golden platform, the sect leaders had taken their seats one by one. He Tu, Zhuri, Tianluan, Kuqin, and Feng Yin were all sitting on the golden platform in the middle. On both sides were the leaders of Wanxiang, Flowing Cloud, and other top-rank sections. As for the lead disciples of the sects like Zhan Zai and Zhou Mumu, they usually only had to wait behind their sect's elders and had no qualification to sit. However, under the guidance of his uncle Feng He and Master Wang Wu, Wang Lu took his seat on the left side of the golden platform. According to the order, it was actually second only to the sect leaders of the 5 uniques. As Wang Lu sat down, his master quietly explained everything to him from behind. That day, after the sect leader got the key from Wang Lu, he immediately returned to 9 regions. After that, the Excavation Management and the Wanxian League conducted a comprehensive inspection of the key to ensure that nothing went wrong, and on the other hand, they prepared for today's ceremony. For this group of immortal tombs, the Excavation Management and even the entire Wanxian League worked hard for several years without any results. Now that they finally saw the dawn of victory, they were overjoyed. The scale of the ceremony was comparable to the Wanxian League's 10,000 Immortals meeting, which was held once in decades. There were 3 main items on the agenda of the ceremony. The first was the speech by the leader of the Wanxian League, Supreme He Tu, followed by the speech by the director of the Excavation Management, Feng Yin. Considering the identity of these 2 people, Their speech was an essential procedure. The third item was more surprising. The Wanxian League actually arranged for Wang Lu to give a speech as the recipient of the Outstanding Contribution Award. Actually, there's nothing surprising about it. Wang Wu, who was standing behind her disciple, said rather mockingly, "Think about it carefully. What have these people from the Wanxian League and the excavation management done in the past few months? They spent a huge amount of money to cross the ocean, not for trade nor for colonization, but for the key to the group of immortal tombs. However, in addition to killing the local natives in the Western continent, causing both sides to suffer, have they ever achieved any practical and effective results? You saw Golden King, and you took the key. From the beginning to the end, it has nothing to do with them. If you didn't stay in the Western continent for another month, giving the Wanxian League and the excavation management more or less time to paint their faces, this whole action would simply be a farce. This opening ceremony should summarize the achievements of the past few months and even the past few years. But without you, what else could they summarize? To summarize how bloated and incompetent their own bureaucracy is? Ha ha ha, if that's the case, then it's true that they can't do without me. But this is strange. Since my importance is so irreplaceable, what kind of ability does Chonghua have that she could be my substitute and sit here? Her? Apart from you, she is the biggest contributor to the excavation management's Western expedition. Do you remember the situation that I told you before? When sect leader senior brother went to the Knowledge City alone to look for clues about the key to the group of immortal tombs, it was not only to get rid of Tian Yu, but also because senior brother really needed strong evidence to prove that the key to the group of immortal tombs is in the king's treasure house. As the person in charge of excavation management, he was actually suffering from the bloated bureaucracy, so he could not act arbitrarily like you. Any decision must have sufficient basis. Even if on the second day after he set foot in the Western continent, he already had 60 to 70% certainty that the key was in the treasure house, he still had to look for clues. However, with his IQ and foreign language ability, in an environment where there was no language barrier, looking for clues in thousands of libraries was more difficult than looking for a wife. At that time, it was Chonghua who helped him that he was finally able to synthesize the clues from thousands of documents. Wang Lu said in surprise, "Chonghua." "Yes, it's Chonghua." She went alone and entered the Knowledge City earlier than anyone else to start the investigation. In addition to locating the key to the group of immortal tombs, she also helped to sort out the information of the several holy ones of Holy Light religion, analyzing their weaknesses from countless clues. Mad Dog Tian Yu and sect leader senior brother were able to suppress the legendary holy ones of Holy Light religion, and the information that Chonghua sorted out is indispensable. Wang Lu sighed with emotion. Unexpectedly, she's actually an academic talent. You really can't judge a book by its cover. I thought that she, that kind of high mountain flower, was most suitable to play the role of asterisk or something like that. Well, let's put aside Chonghua's problem for the time being. The point is, you arranged me to speak without my consent, but I haven't. Before he could finish his words, Wang Wu handed him a thick draft of the speech. You don't need to prepare it. Just read it according to this. Don't miss a single word. Wang Wu lightly said, "Don't worry, this is the result of 3 days and 3 nights of painstaking effort by the drafting team set up by the excavation management." Before transcribing it, they also specially proofread it 3 times, ensuring that every word is carefully chosen. Every word is a gem. The more Wang Lu listened, the more mysterious he felt. However, before he could open it to take a closer look, a soft but irresistible force spread out not far from him. Like a spring breeze, it powerfully attracted his attention from the draft in his hand. Fellow Taoists, the opening ceremony of the group of immortal tombs officially begins now. The one who spoke was Feng Yin Taoist master, who was on the left side of the golden platform, who was also the host of the ceremony. The voice of the sect leader of Lingzhen school was neither fast nor slow, flat and light. However, the moment he opened his mouth, the slightly noisy grassland suddenly became silent. Everyone restrained their voice and focused on one thing. Thousands of pairs of eyes gathered on the golden platform, waiting for Feng Yin Taoist master's next words with a pious posture. Of course, behind this pious posture, no one knew how many people secretly cursed the despicable and shameless bureaucrats of the Wanxian League. This kind of attention-grabbing spell, which forced people to listen carefully, was the product of thousands of years of bureaucratic culture of the Wanxian League. Its origin was no longer reliable, and for thousands of years, people gnashed their teeth in hatred.
However, it was still tenacious. Whenever an important leader gave a speech, this spell would be used, which forced the people below to not even be able to doze off. Fortunately, Feng Yin Taoist master's opening remarks were very short. After 2 or 3 sentences, he entered the first agenda item. Next, the Wanxian League's leader, Hichu Daoren, will give a speech. During the short period of time, the spell was lifted. Wang Lu didn't want to waste time, so he lowered his head to look at the draft. At first glance, he couldn't wait to slap the table and stand up.
Because at first glance, Wang Lu saw that the title of his speech was actually Report on the Task of Searching for Things in the Western Continent. The first sentence under the title was, in order to thoroughly implement the spirit of the 107th General Assembly of the Wanxian League, earnestly do a good job in the excavation and management of the group of immortal tombs, and earnestly look for the key to open the group of immortal tombs.
Our team is closely united around the Excavation Management Committee with Feng Yin Taoist Master as the core. We firmly grasp the key points of the work determined in the first working meeting of the Excavation Management Committee, and earnestly carry out the work. Now the relevant situation is reported as follows. First, careful preparation and thorough deployment. What the F***CK is this? Wang Lu couldn't wait to burn the book on the spot. Unfortunately, just as he was about to flip out, Hichu Daoren opened his mouth. Filled with anger. He could only endure it. Chapter 367.
In short, in the new stage, the excavation management, with the support of the Wanxian League, will persist in hard work, persist in pioneering and innovating, and make due contributions to the development of the immortal path.
As Feng Yin Taoist Master finished reading the last word, there was a burst of thunderous applause under the golden platform. Of course, it was not because of how wonderful the speech of Feng Yin Taoist Master was, but because the torturous speech of the leader finally came to an end, which made people feel relieved. Listening to the boring report while being unable to divert their attention because of the spell, this feeling was no different from being raped. Fortunately, Feng Yin Taoist Master was considerate of everyone, so the full text of the report was very simple. At least, compared to Hichu Daoren who read the report for 6 hours, it was particularly kind. When people felt relieved, they remembered the report of Hichu Daoren not long ago, which made them feel a lingering fear. As a matter of fact, Hichu Daoren was not the kind of bureaucratic cultivator who rejoiced in grandiose achievements. As the highest cultivator in 9 regions, his interest in immortal cultivation was far greater than power, whether it was the power of the mortal world or the power of the Wanxian League. However, at the same time, Hichu Daoren was also an incredibly upright person, and his sense of responsibility was strong enough to make the vast majority of cultivators feel ashamed of their inferiority. As the leader of Shangjing sect and the nominal supreme leader of the Wanxian League, he attached great importance to his duties, and must do his job perfectly. In his speech at the opening ceremony of the group of immortal tombs, Hichu Daoren needed to summarize and point out the focus of the next stage of the work of the Wanxian League. However, the Wanxian League involved a lot of people, so if he wanted to cover all aspects, he had to spend a lot of time. The 6 hours report was the result of his repeated simplification. If someone listened carefully, it was not difficult to find that the content had reached the level where even 1,000 gold would be hard to change a word. After the 2 leaders, it was the turn of Wang Lu, who won the Outstanding Contribution Award, to speak. However, when it was Wang Lu's turn to speak, the crowd clearly slacked off. Previously, the spell that he too and Feng Yin used was to condense the fate of the people using their own magical power. It was extremely disgusting, but the effect was astonishing. Cultivators who were not in the deity stage and held leadership positions could not use it. As for Wang Lu, who was only a high-level shoot-on-stage disciple, he could not count on him. On the other hand, Wang Lu, who was on the golden platform, did not mind. He deeply detested this kind of formalism, which could be called mental violence.
Even though he himself, as the speaker, was actually the violent party of this activity, he did not feel the slightest bit of pleasure.
Picking up the script, Wang Lu read from the script in a flat voice. However, the reaction of the audience was varied. Most of them pretended to be focused, but they were actually absent-minded. A small number of maverick people simply dozed off. Of course, there were also a lot of people who listened attentively. Because compared to the previous 2 leaders, Wang Lu's speech actually had more substance.
By now, people who knew a little bit about the inside story knew that the actions of the Wanxian League and the excavation management in the Western continent were almost all in vain.
The key to the group of immortal tombs was obtained by Wang Lu and his companions alone. During this period, they did not borrow the power of any sect or organization. If this matter was not circulated among many high-level cultivators, it would be hard to believe. A group of Shudan stage cultivators had completed the great undertaking that many deity stage and even supreme of unity stage could not. This was already difficult to explain with the reason of young heroes. Therefore, many people really couldn't wait to know how did Wang Lu and the others do it? Third, carefully make the relevant preparations. 1. At the organizational level, carefully select the team members, rather lack than substandard. Make full use of the power of the sect. Select the strong and obedient team members of the same generation. At the same time, hire professional foreign aid to further enrich the strength. While reading the script, Wang Lu also lamented that the person who drafted this script was really powerful. He could actually summarize his several months of vivid adventure experience in such a dry and tasteless way. If he saw such a work plan a few months ago, he would have given up on the Western continent on the spot. However, the advantage of this kind of script was that it was foolproof. No matter how picky a person was, it was difficult to find any omission or taboo. Every word in the script was accurate and concise, and at the same time, rich in connotation. For example, the sentence of hiring professional foreign aid to further enrich the strength. The word hire subtly pointed out the identity of Aya, that she was not an internal member of Spirit Sword sect. In this way, even if there was a problem, they could use the excuse of a temporary worker, a foreign friend, and other reasons to shirk it. However, this sentence was placed after the selection of peers. Although it somewhat weakened the role of Aya, it highlighted the strength of the peers of Spirit Sword sect, which was obviously a politically correct rhetoric. Reading the script, Wang Lu unconsciously remembered what he heard about Holy Light religion in Dragon City of Bretonia. In Holy Light religion, there was a time when asceticism was popular, which was to quickly improve the strength through abstinence. However, other desires were fine, but if the desire to reproduce was gone, Holy Light religion would be in big trouble. The inheritance of professions in the Western continent largely relied on the power of the bloodline. This was also the case for the priests of Holy Light religion. Those with pure bloodline were more likely to perceive the Holy Light and receive the blessing of the Holy Light. And if all of these elite talents went to asceticism to practice abstinence, in the eyes of the higher-ups of the church, it was simply like sterilizing a fine stallion, utterly devoid of conscience. Therefore, after several discussions by the higher-ups, a special reproduction method was proposed. A piece of white cloth was used to cover the female's body, and a hole was dug in the key part. Then the ascetic would be separated by the white cloth and complete the reproduction through the hole. At that time, when he heard about this, Wang Lu praised the Holy Light religion who invented this method. He believed that this method was undoubtedly a powerful spiritual sterilization method, which reflected the powerful wisdom of the Western continent people. At this time, it seemed that the wisdom of the 9 regions people was not inferior. Wasn't this boring report just like a piece of white cloth that blocked all pleasure? However, from the corner of his eyes, Wang Lu saw that many of the leading cultivators on the Golden Platform, such as Supreme Jury of Kunlun Immortal Mountain, had an intoxicated look on their face and listened with relish. And the always serious Hichu Daoren, although there was no obvious change in his expression, he also nodded frequently, seemingly quite approving of it. Wang Lu was shocked. How powerful was his imagination to be able to turn dry words into a delightful story. He was indeed worthy to be a leader. He had already reached the realm of reading all the official documents in the world, and his heart naturally reached a climax. When Wang Lu's mood changed and his mind was completely distracted, his recitation of the manuscript was still smooth. As a Shudan stage cultivator, although his non-phase immortal heart was not as powerful as those King Pil Yuanying stage cultivators, multitasking was also a basic skill. However, because he had no interest in the official documents, he didn't think much when he recited it. When he found that some people under the stage had a strange reaction, it was already too late. On the material level, carefully choose high quality, and inexpensive magic treasure suppliers. For example, Blue River Prefecture's Broken Mountain House, which supplies flying swords. During the discount period, buy 20 magic treasure flying swords wholesale at a special discount price of 3,888 spirit stones per sword. Golden Peak Monastery, which supplies the heart protection mirror,
By the middle-grade magical weapon Primal Chaos Mirror at the agreed price of 9,888 spirit stones. Floating Fragrance House. By the special price elixir. While reading the manuscript, Wang Lu's mind was somewhat muddled. The next dozens of pages of the manuscript in his hand were mostly used to introduce a bunch of suspicious products from a bunch of pheasant Shanghai suppliers that came out of nowhere. Before he set off to the west, he did make quite adequate preparation, but he never patronized these unreliable merchants. If he wanted to purchase, he basically did it through his sect or through the mysterious Sky Mansion. So where did these things come from? Remembering that the person who sent the manuscript to him was his beloved and poor master, Wang Lu felt that everything didn't need to be explained. At the same time, behind him, where the golden platform blocked everyone's view, Wang Lu had already heard the elders of the Lingjian school begin to stir. Third martial uncle, disciplinary elder Feng He, sternly questioned fifth junior sister about her intentions. Do you know what kind of occasion it is today? Do you want to bring shame to the whole school? Wang Wu righteously defended herself. I risked my life to get so many sponsors. Although the quality of these unscrupulous merchants' products can't be guaranteed, each of them paid a huge sum of advertising fees. Only then did I add their names in the manuscript. Just these dozens of pages, less than 10,000 words. Are you afraid? Adding 10,000 words for 1,000 words. Are you afraid? Whether our Lingjian school can wash away the poor sword school's name depends on this. You are the poor sword school. Your whole family is poor sword school. Sixth elder Lu Li, who was in charge of the school's wealth, immediately jumped up. In the entire non-phase peak, you are the only poor person. The per capita GDP of Lingjian school is ranked in the top of the entire Wanxian League, and the per capita wealth is also in the first square array. Poor your whole family. Feng He was furious. For money, you don't care about anything? Instead, Wang Wu doubtfully asked, that's money with money, what else do I need to worry about? Seeing that Feng He was about to punish her regardless of the people present, Wang Wu immediately added, I will hand over part of the profit. Lu Li's eyes lit up. Senior brother, please wait, listen to her share. The argument of the sect elders didn't make Wang Lu care too much. On the contrary, his mind has been attracted by other things. For the current Wang Lu, tens of millions of spirit stones were actually not important. The wealth of spirit stones was only useful for large organizations. What he cared about was the more scarce resources, such as high-quality magical weapons, or high-level cultivation methods that had enough reference value. These things were hard to find even if one had money. Gold, silver, or spirit stones were not easy to use. Usually, a higher currency unit was used for transactions. At present, the most popular method was to use high-quality magical weapons. This point actually had something in common between the East and West continents. In the Western continent, above the magic coin was a treasure called Jordan Stone. As for high-quality magical weapons, for Wang Lu, it was not easy to get his hands on them. However, now it seemed like he saw a shortcut to get rich. Oh, I almost forgot, I am now a celebrity. I have sat with He Tu, Xueqi, Tian Luan, and the others. Moreover, I also have the identity of the lead disciple of the 5 uniques. I am already a standard Big V. Chapter 368. In the astonishment of countless people, Wang Lu finally finished reading his report. At this time, the quarrel between the several elders behind him also came to an end. Wang Lu clearly heard that the disciplinary elder wanted to confiscate all of his master's illegal gains in accordance with the sect's rules. His master protested several times, but to no avail. She could only swallow the bitter fruit and put on a sullen face. Seeing her expression as if she had just been raped, Feng He was helpless and did not pursue the matter further. Seeing this, Wang Lu could not help but sneer. His third uncle thought that Wang Wu was too simple. If this fellow's wealth was really robbed, she would not have this expression. But now this I admit defeat attitude could only mean one thing. She lied about her illegal gains. The millions of spirit stones that his third uncle collected were simply irrelevant to her. The advertising fee that those sponsors gave her was not just a mere millions of spirit stones. At least, the first sum of money was just a deposit, and later on, there would definitely be a high percentage. Actually, if one thought about it, how could 1,000,000 spirit stones cover the price of a public advertisement in the highest specification meeting of the Wanxian League? However, there was no need for him to say these words. When he returned to the mountain, he would slowly discuss the percentage with his master. After all, he could not advertise while she took the benefit. Moreover, after Wang Lu finished reading the draft, it was time for the most important agenda item of the day: the opening of the group of immortal tombs. The entrance to the group of immortal tombs was originally hidden at the bottom of the ancient sword tomb. However, in recent years, the excavation management had fully excavated and transformed the ancient sword tomb. And in order to cater to today's ceremony, they also deliberately built the entrance into a rail gate and placed it on the vast grassland. If there was only one gate, it would look very lonely. However, when Feng Yin Taoist master raised his hand and held up the key to open the immortal tombs, the entire grassland lit up. The overgrown weeds and the rooted soil sunk one after another, and a complete city rose from the soil amidst people's exclamation. Looking at the amazed eyes of the people present, the several high-level excavation management on the golden platform secretly nodded their heads. This city was actually a gift project, specially built for the opening ceremony. It looked magnificent and orderly, but in fact, it only took a short 3 days from the establishment to the completion. Several nascent soul cultivators joined hands to cast a spell, and a city that could accommodate tens of thousands of people came into being. To a large extent, this city was based on the Taba city of the Western continent. However, the layout of the city was more reasonable and orderly. The main purpose of the city was to build a large number of supporting facilities around an inexhaustible treasure house. On one hand, it was convenient for cultivators to enter the group of immortal tombs to dig for treasures. On the other hand, it was also to fully explore the commercial value of the group of immortal tombs. After seeing the Taba city of the Western continent, no one doubted the attraction of the group of immortal tombs to the cultivators of 9 regions. This place would certainly become one of the most popular areas in 9 regions, and the area around the entrance of the group of immortal tombs was truly a land of gold. The core area of the city had already been divided by the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League before the construction started. Among them, the 2 most valuable pieces of land around the entrance belonged to Lingjian School and Shengjing Sect respectively. The rest of the land belonged to 10,000 Arts Sect, Kunlun Immortal Sect, and Royal Soldier Sect. Actually, when Feng Yin Taoist master proposed the project, he could also rely on the outstanding contribution of Wang Lu and his authority in the excavation management to let Lingjian School get more benefits. It was just that, after discussing with Lu Li, he thought that with the size and characteristics of Lingjian School, it was meaningless to occupy too many areas, so it was better to use it as a favor. In addition to the areas that have already been reserved, there was still a lot of vacant land left in the city, which was planned to be auctioned at the right time, and the proceeds would be managed by the excavation management. After the emergence of the city, Feng Yin Taoist master named it Plentiful City, which implied a harvest city, and also a kind of commemoration. Before the Age of Chaos, there was a city in the 9 regions that was famous for its richness, which was also called Plentiful City. However, this Plentiful City, which contained infinite future, was destined to be a foil today, because the gate of the Immortal Graveyard was about to be truly opened. The key to the Immortal Graveyard was jointly held by Hichu Daoren and Feng Yin, and they slowly put it into the gap of the gate. After a short yet long wait, the heavy door suddenly opened, revealing an expanse of star-like brilliance. In the midst of the fine light, a nebula-like whirlpool slowly and powerfully rotated. At the same time, an old voice came from the gate. After waiting for so long, I finally see a living person. As soon as the voice fell, several figures flashed in front of the gate. Tianluan, Zhuri, and Kuqin instantly stood beside He Tu and Feng Yin. The leaders of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League had gathered and confronted the voice from the gate. Regardless of how much preparation the excavation management and the Wanxian League had done in advance, there were still many unknowns in the world after the gate was opened, and unknowns also meant risks. Wang Lu's experience in the lowest level of the ancient sword tomb had more or less spread out, and the story of sword demon Zhong Shengming was also well known by many archaeology enthusiasts. And if a Dixian-level character who withstood the 4 in 9 divine tribulations was only used to guard the gate, then it would not be strange for anything to appear in the immortal graveyard. And once there was a real danger, these leader-level cultivators were naturally duty-bound. Just now, they sat upright on the golden platform, looking down at all living beings. Behind this privilege also meant a special obligation. 4 Supremes of Unity stage and 1 Peak Deity stage. In fact, after defeating the prophet of Holy Light religion outside of Taba City, no one dared to regard Feng Yin as an ordinary Peak Deity stage cultivator. With such power,
even if a true immortal came down to earth, it would not be good. The voice from the gate paused for a moment, and then somewhat helplessly said, "Don't be so nervous, I haven't eaten people for a long time." Seeing that there was no response from the 5 people at the gate, the voice from the gate was somewhat disappointed. After tens of thousands of years, it's not easy to make a joke, but no one responded to it? Has the current immortal cultivation world become so impetuous and utilitarian that they don't even have the mood to talk to an old man who has just been unearthed? Very well, as you wish, I'll go straight to the point. Being able to open this group of immortal tombs proves that you should be aware of its value, but you may not realize the price behind this value. Upon hearing this, the 5 peerless cultivators had different complexions. After a long time, Feng slowly opened his mouth and tentatively said, "This immortal tomb uses the power of the feng shui line as the core, and the words and deeds of the cultivators that go deep into it lead to the cause and effect to create suitable magical treasures. The so-called price is the experiential learning that the cultivators have to go through." This answer was, of course, wrong, at least far from perfect. It was true that this was the basic principle of this immortal tomb, but it was like going to a restaurant to eat and only calculating the cost of the ingredients, not considering that the chef and the waiter also have to live. The power of the feng shui line and the cause and effect of the cultivators were only the basic cost of creating magical treasures in the immortal tomb. The existence of this group of immortal tombs must have a more profound meaning. Sure enough, the voice from the gate said, "This is not the price. The treasures in this group of immortal tombs have an inestimable value for you right now. With all due respect, after sleeping for tens of thousands of years, I am quite disappointed to see that the current 9 regions has become so weak. And if you want to obtain the treasures, experiential learning alone is far from enough. Would the people who built this group of immortal tombs care about the experiential learning process of you, the later generations?" Feng said, "So what exactly do you want?" "Responsibility." The voice from the gate lightly said, "The group of immortal tombs is the legacy left by the ancestors. If you want to take away the treasures, you have to inherit the will of the ancestors, which is a necessary responsibility." Feng was not surprised by this. It should be said that in the past few years of preparation for the opening of the group of immortal tombs, the research on this group of immortal tombs had been carried out in depth, which was enough for people to make a preliminary judgment. The people who built this group of immortal tombs were a group of great pioneers. They built this group of immortal tombs for a noble reason. During this period, they traveled all over the 9 regions, and even traveled thousands of miles to the western continent to exchange skills with the sages from afar. Then, with the knowledge obtained from the other continent, they finally completed this group of immortal tombs. Hearing this, everyone present understood why the Golden King's treasure house and the group of immortal tombs were similar, and why the key to the group of immortal tombs was in the hands of Golden King. They also had a vague answer. However, people were also more curious. What was the purpose of the people in the past to build a great building that had no meaning to them at all costs? As for the specific reason, you will know it when you gradually go deeper. This is not a one-off deal, but a step-by-step test. The deeper you go into the group of immortal tombs, the more benefits you can get, but at the same time, the greater the responsibility you have to shoulder. At this time, someone suddenly asked, "What if you just want to take the benefit but not the responsibility? Is there any shortcut to take?" Such a naked and even shameless question. Among the 10,000 people present, only one person dared to ask it so openly. Everyone turned their eyes and saw a woman with snow-white clothes and fluttering long hair, who was maliciously smiling. Behind the woman, several elders of the Lingjian school were trying to stop her from speaking, but they were forced by her invisible sword Qi to not get close to her. The voice from the gate was not angry. "That's impossible. When you get the treasure, you will naturally shoulder the responsibility that you should shoulder. Can't it be divided?" Wang Wu seemed to have guessed something. The smile on her face gradually became a bit more dignified. She then picked up the wine gourd from her waist and drank more than half of it in one go. The voice from the gate didn't answer. After a long time, it let out a sigh. It feels good to talk to a living person. Even if it's only 2 or 3 sentences, it's better than talking to myself in the immortal tombs for tens of thousands of years. Unfortunately, my power has been exhausted. Future generations, try your best to explore the immortal tombs, not only for the ancestors, but also for yourselves. With that, the nebula vortex inside the gate automatically dispersed, and the voice also disappeared without a trace. However, the stars behind the gate became more dazzling and soon connected into one, as if silently welcoming the arrival of people. The leaders of the 5 great sects looked at each other, and then Feng Yin took the initiative to step forward. As the director of the excavation management, I should take the lead. Hichu Daoren nodded and did not object. The first to enter the immortal tomb was, of course, likely to get the greatest benefit, but it was also likely to encounter the greatest danger. It was best for Feng Yin to take on this responsibility. As for him, Hichu Daoren, as the leader of the Onxian League, it was not appropriate for him to force himself to take the lead at any time. I'll also go with you. I don't want to wait for a moment longer for the secret left by Dixian. With that, Supreme Tianluan also took a step forward, intending to go with them. For the first exploration of the group of immortal tombs, these 2 were enough. Even if other people had the intention to go, they didn't think that they were worthy to go with Tianluan and Feng Yin. The 2 sect leaders looked at each other. With Feng Yin in the lead and Tianluan in the back, they walked into the gate one after the other. While everyone was watching and wishing them well, a leisurely figure slowly walked into the gate. His pace was indescribably bold and confident. That light and gentle posture seemed as if the 2 people in front of him were just the pioneers, while he was the real protagonist. That person was Wang Lu. Chapter 369. Sometimes, a maverick act under the watchful eyes of the public would often become smooth because of the inaction of the highly shocked audience. For example, at this moment, when Wang Lu strode behind Supreme Tianluan, ready to step into the group of immortal tombs, the surrounding Yuanying and deity stage cultivators stared with their eyes wide open, stunned, but no one stopped him. Because everyone thought that this was a special program, which must contain a deep meaning, it was just that they didn't know much about it. Even Hichu Daoren just stared at Wang Lu seriously without saying a word. However, before Wang Lu could cross the door in front of everyone's astonished eyes, a powerful palm firmly pressed him on his shoulder. "Brat, do you want to die?" Wang Lu looked at his master in surprise. If she didn't intervene, he would have been able to fool his way in. As for how much risk there would be in the group of immortal tombs, in fact, there really wouldn't be much risk. For the group of immortal tombs, Wang Lu, as the holder of the map, knew more than anyone present after years of analysis. Although there were dangers there, it was not a dragon's pool or a tiger's den. At least the first few levels were not life-threatening. However, before he could insist on defending himself, his master's words made his face sink. "You want to take that thing in your non-phase immortal heart to take risks? Do you really want to die?" While speaking, Wang Lu simply couldn't refute. His master lifted him up and poured a magical power homologous to non-phase method into his body, making him unable to move. Then she flew away, leaving no room for doubt. This was the first time for Wang Lu to discover that his master's flying sword could be so fast. She, a mere king pill cultivator, stepped on her emerald green bamboo sword, crisscrossing through the clouds, and actually traveled thousands of miles in an instant. From the southern heaven region to the Blue River region, it only took them a cup of tea's time to travel tens of thousands of miles. Wang Lu only felt a blur in front of him. In front of him, he and his master had returned to the territory of Spirit Sword Mountain. After returning to Non-Phase Peak, his master didn't even say a word. With a gloomy face, she directly carried Wang Lu into the bamboo room where the 2 of them had lived together for more than 10 years. She then pushed him down onto the bed and reached out to take off his clothes. Wang Lu was inexplicably surprised. "Hey, is this some kind of peculiar welfare treatment on Non-Phase Peak? It's not that I can't accept it, but how about I take a bath first and then eat a kilogram of oysters? It's better for you and for me." His master sneered disdainfully, and then reached out to take off his red and white Taoist robe without stopping. His movements were so smooth and natural that it was hard to describe it as a hands-on familiarity. When Wang Wu continued to reach for her belt, Wang Lu felt that something was wrong. Over the past decade or so, the master and disciple had indeed joked about this a lot. However, apart from joking, the 2 of them had a very subtle grasp of propriety and had never crossed the line. And now this scene, no matter how he looked at it, looked like a scene of rape. Not to mention crossing the line, it was absolutely a criminal act. However, seeing his master's solemn face, without the slightest bit of lewd intention, Wang Lu could only guess. Could it be that master has been teaching me for so many years, just so that one day, she can use my yang to supplement her yin, to fill the gap in her cultivation base and moral integrity? Now that I have successfully reached shoot on stage, and there is a quasi-legendary she cultivator inside my body, it is a legendary level tonic.
She only needs to sit on the ground and absorb the soil, and then she can say goodbye to the King Pill stage and become a glorious Taoist master of Yuanying stage, making up for the gap with the other elders of Heavenly Sword Hall, and the monthly offering can also go up a step. With such a reliable reason, Wang Lu could not imagine any reason for his master not to be blessed with him. However, the next moment, Wang Lu knew that he was wrong. Because after his master took off his pants, she took out a box of ointment from nowhere and applied it on his body. The ointment was cool to the touch, and a trace of coolness gradually penetrated along the skin, from his blood vessels to his jade mansion immortal heart, covering his golden non-phase immortal heart with a layer of green light.
Ice heart fat?
His master coldly snorted.
Otherwise, how could it be Indian divine oil?
You are a reckless fool. Do you really think that with your 35th layer of non-phase immortal heart, you can suppress a devil-level devil for a long time? A devil-level devil? His master said, I don't know how it is divided in the Western continent, but in my opinion, it is a powerful devil. It is invisible and invisible, born from the evil thoughts of people, and is the most strange and difficult to deal with. I don't know what method you use to seriously injure it, and then use your non-phase immortal heart to suppress it. Your idea is good, but this method is simply courting death. This kind of devil can be suppressed for a while, but for a long time, do you think you won't die fast enough? Wang Lu's complexion became serious, and he operated his primordial spirit to sweep through his body. Invisible and invisible. Even non-phase method can't detect the abnormality? That depends on whose non-phase method it is.
Is it you?
Hehe. After sneering, Wang Wu explained, because it is too weak, it can only parasitize in your body for a short period of time. Your non-phase immortal heart has a solid foundation, so its parasitizing progress is very slow, but at the same time, it didn't show any abnormality. Last time when I saw you in the Western continent, I didn't notice it because of a moment of negligence, but when you came back, TSK, the death omen on top of your head can dazzle my eyes. Is it really that powerful? Otherwise, why do you think I have been standing behind you when you were reading the report? Listening to such a boring thing gives me a headache, and in the middle of it, I still have to fight with that stupid third brother. Master's painstaking care. Isn't it to help you suppress the devil? Wang Lu was surprised. Isn't it to supervise me to finish reading the sponsorship speech? Nonsense, with your temper. You would definitely come back to me after you finished reading. Do you need to supervise me? At the same time, she stretched out her hand and pressed it on Wang Lu's chest. Pure and abundant magical power of non-phase poured into Wang Lu's body. Like an elite army, it completely surrounded the non-phase immortal heart that was shrouded in dim light in his jade mansion.
Okay, leave the rest to me. Be a good boy and go to sleep.
As soon as her voice fell, Wang Lu felt his head sink, and drowsiness came unstoppably. When he woke up, the light in the bamboo room was dim, and the blood-colored setting sun slanted down from the window, bringing a trace of warmth. There was a faint fragrance of wine in the room, which doubled the warmth. Judging from the light, Wang Lu guessed that he should have slept for half a day. Previously, when he was brought back to Spirit Sword Mountain by his master in the Southern Heaven region, it was not long after noon, and now it was just evening. The next moment, his master's lazy voice came from the hall outside the bedroom.
You finally woke up, young Master Lu? TSK, you really can sleep. It's been 3 years and 6 months.
Wang Lu suddenly got up.
3 years and 6 months?
His master smiled maliciously in the hall.
Yes, you didn't expect it, right?
When he woke up, it was already the blue sea and mulberry fields, and the world had changed. By the way, 2 days ago was your junior sister Lu Li's wedding, but you just slept and didn't attend it. Are you regretful? Wait a minute, little Lu Li's wedding?
Yes, the other party is Zhan Zai of the 10,000 Arts sect. The current Taoist master Zai can be considered a perfect match. Zhan Zai secretly loves little Lu Li. You should know this, right? In the past few years when you were asleep, Zhan Zai launched a crazy attack.
The key is that he sent a lot of betrothal gifts to the mountain, full of sincerity, which is really hard to refuse. Wang Lu frowned.
And then
You slept for too long, and the lead disciple position was taken away by Zhu Shiyao. Although I helped you fight for it, she has successfully advanced to the King Pill stage, and in the group of immortal tombs, she has repeatedly shocked the world.
Her brilliance even surpassed Qianghua, so you, a sleeping beauty, really have no competitiveness.
Although in the past few years, you have repeatedly created miracles, but the previous achievements of the King Pill are actually empty.
Is there anything else?
Then, your wisdom sect has been disbanded, and several vice sect leaders have been fighting for power and profit. However, you, the sect leader, are not there, so there is no one to suppress them. Therefore, they soon went their own way and scattered. Once wisdom sect has no backbone, the next step is to fade into the crowd, and then be annexed by other forces. TSK, after 3 years and 6 months, I have actually become so miserable.
Wang Lu's tone was full of disbelief.
Wang Wu was actually indifferent.
That's normal. Since your debut, you have had many fortuitous encounters, and you have advanced triumphantly. However, after all, your foundation is shallow. Once you stop, it's like sailing against the current. Everything in the past is easy to vanish. However, this is also a good thing for you. You should calm down and seriously cultivate for a period of time. As a cultivator, your first priority is to cultivate, not to stir up trouble everywhere. During this period of time, you should steadily advance to the King Pill stage.
Wang Lu was silent for a long time, and then suddenly smiled. Although many regrettable things have happened in the past, there is always one good thing, and that is, the sharing fee that you owe me can be accumulated with interest for 3 years and 6 months.
As soon as his voice fell, his master jumped up. Damn, where did the sharing fee come from? Where did the interest come from? Wang Lu smiled faintly. What, do you want to renege on your debt? That's fine too. Master, please pay with your body. With your beauty. This time it will be 200 copper coins, okay? Wang Wu stared at her disciple's eyes seriously. When she saw that there was only ridicule in his eyes, she knew that her trick had failed. She could only shrug her shoulders in boredom. As expected, I can't fool you. How boring. By the way, you really didn't sleep for that long. How did you find out about the problem? Nonsense. How could Xiao Liuli marry someone else? Of course, no one would believe your nonsense. Wang Wu was dumbfounded. She kept feeling that her disciple's intelligence seemed to have gone in the wrong direction, but she didn't know how to correct it. Anyway, look at this. As Wang Wu spoke, she used her finger to tip a gray ball on the table in the hall. Wang Lu got up and put on his clothes. When he went to the hall to take a look, he couldn't help but be amused. Is this your ovulation period? Wang Wu smiled coldly. No, this is your egg. Wang Lu's smile froze. He felt as if a certain part of his body had turned cold. Chapter 370. His master's words caused Wang Lu to subconsciously feel a bit cold. His master stole something important while he was sleeping? Well, the truth was certainly not that strange. As a cultivator of non-phase method, Wang Lu's ability to control his body had reached a very high level. He could perceive even the slightest loss, let alone a vital object. This is taken from your body. It's in the shape of an egg, so of course it's your egg. His master's face remained unchanged as she blurted out nonsense. She then said, I've studied it for a while, but I found nothing. Don't you boast that you're the top student of Spirit Sword Sect? Then the important task of revealing the secret is handed over to you. Study it carefully. With that, Wang Wu threw the gray ball to Wang Lu. Put it away. This kind of thing is rare in the continent. This is. Wang Lu pinched the ball and felt that it was cool and smooth. When he swept it with his primordial spirit, it was like a void. However, thinking that it was taken from his own body, it was not difficult to guess its content. Faceless one. Yes, it's that devil. After I caught it, I casually cooked it and intended to refine it into an elixir. As a result, perhaps the nature of the devil in the Western continent is different from that in 9 regions, so I didn't refine the elixir. Instead, I refined it into an unknown gray egg. I thought that since you're a boy, you might find it useful, so I left it for you. Hearing this, Wang Lu felt a pain in the ass. 3 Eyes Supreme is famous, but 3 Egg Supreme is absolutely abnormal. However, he still put away the gray ball. Although Wang Wu was a pain in the ass, she was reliable in the issue of training her disciple. Since she wanted him to accept it, there must be a reason for him to accept it. Well then, the hidden danger in my body has been solved, so there's nothing for me to do here, right? Wang Lu said as he was about to leave,
But his mind had already flown to the entrance of the group of immortal tombs in the southern heaven region.
What's the hurry? First, refine the king pill on the mountain. King pill. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu was startled.
He hastily took out a jar of honey from his mustard seed bag, smeared it on the gray ball, and then brushed it with a golden color.
The golden core is here. Please check it.
Stop right there.
This time, Wang Wu unceremoniously pulled her disciple and nailed him in place. It's useless for you to go now. You won't be able to drink the soup. 3 days ago, the first and second batch of people who entered the group of immortal tombs have returned. If you go now, you won't even be able to join the third batch. Wait, the first and second batches.
How long have I been asleep?
Wang Wu replied, it's not as long as 3 years, but it's not as short as 4 hours either. 1 month and 3 days is enough for you to miss all the opportunities to show off.
Wang Lu was even more surprised.
He actually slept for a month? Tiske, how serious is that faceless one's parasite on me?
Wang Wu waved her hand.
Actually, it's not that serious. If it's really serious, I wouldn't have the time to save you. In fact, you could have resuscitation on the 3rd day. I gave you some medicine that made you sleep for a month. Wang Lu was speechless. His master's style of action was really unpredictable. I won't stop you. You're definitely going to the group of immortal tombs. If nothing goes wrong, you're bound to win a series of battles.
Then, you'll revel in that and find other troublesome things to do.
It's not that I want to deliberately hit you, but as your master, I have to remind you that you should stop playing around. Don't forget what your job is.
Wang Wu's complexion was unprecedentedly dignified, so much so that Wang Lu could not relax.
Do you think there's a problem with my direction?
A big problem.
Wang Wu said. Use your brain to think about it. This time, you risked your life and struggled for half a year in the Western continent. What have you gained? Your strength has been greatly improved? Your magical treasure has been greatly upgraded? Your method has been comprehensively strengthened? In my opinion, except for the change in the way Aya looked at you, you actually haven't gained anything. Yes, you've obtained the key to the group of immortal tombs, which can be considered as holding your head high in 9 regions. However, now when people talk about you and Xianghua, they obviously think that the latter is stronger. Because she is the king pill, while you are not, and in the immortal cultivation world, strength is still the number 1. Wang Lu sighed. I know, I don't need you to nag me. Jindan's stage is a watershed. Before Jindan, no matter how illustrious the achievements are, it's just a false reputation, right? What Wang Lu said was the rule of the immortal cultivation world of 9 regions. The king pill and the non-king pill were 2 completely different concepts. Any Taoist master of the king pill was a precious treasure of the immortal cultivation world of 9 regions. From the beginning, a cultivator would have to go through the 3 stages of Qi cultivating stage, foundation establishment stage, and Shudon stage, breaking through the difficult test of the world and oneself, and finally achieving the king pill, which was a very great achievement. In the entire immortal cultivation world, out of 10,000 cultivators who entered the Qi cultivating stage, no more than 10 could eventually achieve the king pill. For all living beings, the Taoist master of the king pill was already high above, standing at the top of the world. In fact, the king pill was indeed a completely different stage. In the first few stages, a cultivator was just a cultivator. However, once one achieved the king pill, one would have the title of Taoist master, which meant that one would have the capital to establish a foothold in the immortal cultivation world. In simple words, it meant that one could be truly like a human in the immortal cultivation world. Achieving the king pill was a qualitative change for a cultivator, and the difficulty of this promotion could be imagined. Unless one did not hesitate to sacrifice their future and became the king pill for the sake of the king pill. Otherwise, any orthodox cultivator would have to stop for a long time on the path from Shudon stage to king pill. It was even more difficult and cautious than using the king pill to advance to Yuanying stage. Wang Lu's expectation for himself was to achieve the king pill in at least 10 years, and if all went well, in 5 years. With his current high-level Shudon stage, this was already a very conservative calculation. However, his master's thought process was faster than his. Within 2 years, I want you to become the Taoist master of the king pill, and then be independent. Wang Lu was really taken aback. 2 years? Hey, do you have to be so ruthless? We've lived together for more than 10 years. Yet you're actually so anxious to drive me away? One day as a master and disciple means 100 days of kindness.
According to the general rule of the Lingjian school or the 9 regions immortal cultivation world, once a cultivator achieved the king pill, he would be like a young man in the mortal world, and would embark on the road of independence and self-improvement.
Generally speaking, he would leave the position of a disciple and enjoy more freedom. At the same time, he would also lose the excessive protection of the sect. Of course, this rule also differed from sect to sect. For those low-rank sects, it was too extravagant to need the king pill to be considered as an adult. Shoot-on stage and even foundation establishment stage disciples would have to work like cattle and horses for the sect. At the level of the 5 uniques of the Union of 10,000 Immortals, although there were not as many Jindan stage cultivators as Yuanying stage cultivators, it was somewhat difficult for a mere Jindan stage cultivator to be independent and take charge. At least, Wang Lu did not intend to leave the protection of the sect after achieving the king pill. It was not that he could not do it, but it was not necessary. For Wang Lu's resistance, Wang Wu just sneered. You think it's too difficult and you can't do it? I've already taken care of you for 2 years with the king pill. Do you know what's the current situation in 9 regions? Although Wang Wu asked about the situation in 9 regions, Wang Lu knew that her focus was on the situation of his peers in 9 regions. Shangjing Sect's Qianghua is indeed worthy to be the lead disciple of the Wanxian League. Not only does she have the king pill, but her state of mind is also outstanding. That day when their eyes met, the feeling in his heart made Wang Lu's evaluation of Qianghua was quite high. Although Kunlun Sect's Zhou Mumu is not good at fighting, she has accumulated a lot of experience, so her cultivation base should be getting faster and faster. When we met at the ancient sword tomb that day, her cultivation base was not particularly outstanding, but in these 2 years, it is very possible for her to have a breakthrough. For Zhou Mumu, whom he once teamed up with, Wang Lu was not stingy to give a positive evaluation, and his inference was also confirmed. Wang Wu said, 3 months later, Zhou Mumu will attempt the king pill under the protection of the sect's elders. Don't ask me why her cultivation base is so fast. I'm too lazy to explain. Wang Lu didn't care and continued to comment, the cultivators of Royal Soldier Sect have been low-key in recent years, so I don't know much about it. But a month ago, I saw Supreme Kuchin. The scar-faced youth behind Kuchin should be the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect, and his cultivation base is not below Qianghua. Yes, he has the most seniority, and his cultivation time is the longest among the lead disciples of this generation. Although he has no outstanding reputation, underestimating Royal Soldier Sect is the stupidest thing. Wang Lu nodded and then said, as for 10,000 arts beheading Zai, Humph, daring to have an idea on little Lu Li. He is doomed to be alone for a lifetime, nothing to worry about. Wang Wu said, hey, the speed of your moral integrity loss is too fast. Wang Lu shrugged. Finally, back to our Lingjian school, there are 4 lead disciples, one who has been missing for years, little Lu Li's brilliant sword heart. Her root bone qualification is hard to find in the world, and her cultivation method is also well prepared. Although her current strength is below me, once she crosses the threshold of the king pill, I'm afraid it would be difficult for her to find a match among cultivators of the same level. When my non-phase sword meets her skybreaker, I have to consider a bit. As for big sister, that's out of the norm, so I won't discuss it. At that time, when Wang Lu and Zhu Shiyao met Sword Demon in the ancient sword tomb, due to a freak combination of factors, Zhu Shiyao's purple mansion was occupied by Sword Demon's primordial spirit. Later on, it was a blessing in disguise. Her primordial spirit greatly evolved, and her strength skyrocketed. Moreover, her cultivation time was longer than others, and her stellar sword technique was also exceptionally powerful. Although she had not crossed the threshold of the king pill, Wang Lu felt that even Qianghua might not be her opponent. Perhaps, among her peers, her comprehensive strength was the real number 1. Your analysis is good, so you see, the advantage that you have established among your peers is now very weak. Although in a one-on-one fight, even Zhu Shiyao might not be able to win against you, within 5 years, she must cross the king pill tribulation. Once she becomes the king pill, her strength will advance by leaps and bounds, and with one sword strike, she can skewer 10 people like you, turning them into candied haws. There's no need to say about little Lu Li. Right now her strength is a bit weak because she hasn't gotten used to the skybreaker, this kind of immortal sword. In short, you have to have a little sense of crisis. The title of number 1 among your peers, you can't sit still anymore. If you don't hold it tight, you really won't be able to hold it. Wang Lu was curious. Why should I care about the title of number 1 or number 2? His master lightly explained, because the difference in sponsorship fees is very big. Chapter 371.
Regardless of the reason why his master prevented Wang Lu from triumphantly entering the group of immortal tombs, after Wang Lu slept for more than a month, many things had indeed changed.
First of all, the exploration of the group of immortal tombs had achieved initial results. Feng Yin and Tian Luan, the first batch to enter the group of immortal tombs, returned to 9 regions half a month ago and achieved impressive results.
In the group of immortal tombs, they saw tens of thousands of innumerable independent spaces, which were called immortal dreamlands.
Moreover, they actually opened up a dreamland. In the dreamland, they experienced a harsh test and won the battle. 2 low-rank spiritual treasures. 4 unity stage and deity stage cultivators. They were negligible.
However, they were, after all, spiritual treasures, enough for 99% of the cultivators in 9 regions to scramble for them.
After Feng Yin and Tian Luan, the second batch to enter was the younger generation disciples, headed by Xueqi. Zhou Mumu and Zhan Zai also participated, but they acted separately. Half a month later, Xueqi passed the test and obtained 3 low-rank magical treasures, while Zhou Mumu and Zhan Zai each obtained 2 magical treasures.
As for the elite disciples of the other sects, some succeeded and some failed, but most of them still gained something.
After 2 rounds, people had a deeper understanding of the group of immortal tombs. That place was indeed an inexhaustible treasure house.
In terms of the richness of the collection, it was even far above the Golden King's treasure house in Western continent.
It was just that, to obtain the treasure, the difficulty had increased a lot. First of all, there were various kinds of tests. What Tian Luan and Feng Yin experienced, the 2 of them did not disclose.
However, in the second round, the experience of the disciples who entered the group of immortal tombs was widely circulated.
Fairy Xueqi had entered a deep mountain, which was filled with demons and devils. After she killed the demons and devils, she found their treasures in their caves, which were 3 low-grade magical weapons. Zhou Mumu's experience was quite strange. She entered a dangerous place, where the environment was so bad that it was difficult for her, a peak Shudan stage cultivator, to survive. Fortunately, she met a seriously injured senior cultivator, whom she healed with her own medical skills. After that senior cultivator gave her the way to survive, he gave her several magical treasures. Zhan Zai encountered 2 senior cultivators. The 2 of them were arguing about the improvement of a cultivation technique. After listening for a while, Zhan Zai was unable to stop himself from joining in. In the end, after discussing for half a month, they finally reached a preliminary result. The 2 magic artifacts were Zhan Zai's reward. Most of the experience of the other cultivators was similar. The dreamland they entered was mostly related to their own specialty, and the feedback was mostly useful. Although the grade was not high, it was because they did not go deep into the immortal dream. According to the existing clues, after getting the treasure, if they did not hurry to withdraw but continued to go deeper, they would get more benefits. However, in addition to this, people also found that there were strict restrictions in the group of immortal tombs. First of all, the magical treasures could only be used by themselves and could not be transferred to other people. This was the biggest problem, which made the outermost layer of the group of immortal tombs quite useless. Feng Yin and Tian Luan each obtained a spiritual treasure, but they could not give it to their disciples. For them, the worst props they had were middle-rank spiritual treasures. As for the low-rank magical treasure that Xueqi obtained, it was worthless to the lead disciple who had been trained with the sect's resources. Therefore, if they really wanted to get substantial benefits, they had to continue to go deeper. However, when they thought about the day when they opened the door, the voice inside said that the more harvest, the greater the responsibility, which inevitably made people hesitate. Therefore, the 3rd round of development had to wait for a while, waiting for everyone to fully absorb the experience of the first 2 rounds before making a plan. And the development team was also in preparation. For the entire Onxian League, the opening of the group of immortal tombs was tantamount to the arrival of a new era, which nurtured the infinite future. Let alone entering the door, even the plentiful city outside the door seemed to be changing with each passing day, full of vitality. The Southern Heaven region had become the focus of the entire 9 regions. Unfortunately, for someone on Spirit Sword Mountain, all of this was destined to be a story. TSK, This is simply unbearable, this group of idiots. The immortal dreamland of the group of immortal tombs clearly needs to be developed by a moderately large team. Through the complementarity of the team members, they can complete difficult tasks and obtain treasures that are beyond their own stage. A lot of clues are obvious, so why do they need to be so careful in developing it? It's simply a waste of time. In the lobby of the humble inn, Wang Lu held a newspaper and then put his legs on the table. His body swayed, and the stool under him slanted. Along with the swaying, it issued a creaking sound. A steady rhythm reverberated in the inn. It was just that, in the sound, Wang Lu's own strong impatience was revealed. But this ear-piercing melody was soon interrupted. The lady boss of the inn angrily slapped the counter. The one who can't stand it is me, okay? Do you have to be so bored that you came all the way to my place? You don't stay in the inn, you don't order food, you just want to read your broken newspaper. Wang Lu lazily said, I don't want to eat because I just ate too much in the cafeteria. You know what I mean, if a shoot-on-stage cultivator really wants to eat to their heart's content, they can even eat an elephant. But if they eat a chef's cooking, I'm afraid even a Supreme of Unity stage would not have an appetite. The lady boss weakly said, Yes, I know you've suffered at Aya's place. But instead of coming here every day to complain, why don't you just speak frankly with her? Wang Lu lightly turned a page of the newspaper and said, Aya has completed her vow. Her spirit of the brave departed is perfect, and then her spirit and body have become one. If we really fight now, I estimate that even Tianyu might not be able to win against her, yet you want me to speak frankly in front of her? The lady boss praised, You really have a firm and unyielding character. Wang Lu said, As for me not staying in the inn, it's because the Wanxian League has recently launched an anti-pornography campaign. I think it's not appropriate for a single man and a single woman to come here and get a room. It doesn't matter if I cheat your black inn, but I, a great celebrity, don't want to go in like this. As soon as his voice fell, a jar of fine newer Hong flew over like a boulder. After leaving the Ru family inn, Wang Lu's mood was still a bit depressed. Through the newspaper of the Shunfeng Bank, he had a panoramic view of the magnificent changes in the outside world. As a professional adventurer, he was really eager to try it, but unfortunately, he could not participate in it. Because his master had given a death order that he could not go down the mountain until he reached the peak of shoot-on stage, and his cultivation method was completely compatible with his realm. If there was a violation, it would be simple. During the 1 month that Wang Lu had been asleep, his master had done too many tricks, such as taking some indecent photos with a recording crystal. If he dared to go down the mountain, she would dare to publish it. Wang Lu had no doubt that with his master's lower limit, she would absolutely do such a thing. The reason why she did not set her goal as achieving the King Pill was that the King Pill required a certain opportunity, and it could not be achieved by just hard work. Of course, with the qualification of the Void Spirit route, there was actually no bottleneck. If he really wanted to achieve the King Pill, he could also achieve it by practicing step by step. However, the difference in quality between the King Pill and the King Pill was so big that one could not be careless. For those mediocre people who regarded achieving the King Pill as their lifelong pursuit, they might not need to consider too much. But for Wang Lu, this step must be firm and strong. In other words, the King Pill must be the best King Pill. In order to achieve this step, in these 2 years, he must do everything he could to consolidate his foundation. Not only must he promote his high-level shoot-on stage to peak shoot-on stage, his non-phase sword and other methods must also reach the 50th layer. To say that it was difficult, it was not as difficult as ascending to heaven. For the current Wang Lu, he could do a lot of things in these 2 years. It was not that he did not gain anything in the Western continent. After countless harsh actual combat, his body seemed to be full of energy, just waiting to erupt. However, the days of cultivation in order to level up were really boring. After getting used to adventuring around, the days of secluded cultivation on the mountain were too hard to bear. Lu Li was taken away by his fourth uncle Zhou Ming for closed-door training. Xiao Bai accompanied his uncle Guanhai to the eastern border region to look for medicine, and the stupid dog, who had eaten something wrong, began to sleep. Even Wen Bao, Yu Xinyao, and the others were sent to Plentiful City in the southern heaven region for experiential learning. On the entire Spirit Sword Mountain, there were only 2 cooks that Wang Lu could talk to. One of them was the crazy alchemist Aya, and every time he approached her, his life would be in danger. The other one was the lady boss of Ru Family Inn, who had been harassed by Wang Lu to put up a sign at the door.
Wang Lu and the dog are not allowed to enter. However, because it was hard to bear, he had to bear it. Wang Lu was very clear that his master's words were right.
He must settle down and seriously cultivate for a period of time.
Otherwise, his heart would never be able to calm down, and the gap between him and the other geniuses of the same generation would shrink, and then expand. Therefore, even though he had taken advantage of his master's drunken state to find his indecent photos in her inner pocket, he still insisted on staying on the mountain. Most of the day was spent in secluded cultivation, and in the middle of the break, he would harass the lady boss.
In 2 years, peak shoot on stage. A year later, on the non-phase peak. Outside the narrow bamboo room, 2 figures crisscrossed like lightning. Sometimes they leaped into the air, sending out sharp sword chi, and sometimes they fought fiercely in close combat. The sound of the sword strikes was like a storm. Countless sword lights burst on the non-phase peak, creating a colorful brilliance. Among the two, one was the main attacker with an overbearing momentum, while the other was the defender, struggling left and right. Among the sword lights, the voice of the master of the non-phase peak was unusually clear and loud. Your sword moves are too slow. Simply outrageous. I fought you with my middle-level shoot-on-stage cultivation, but you couldn't even block 3 of my 10 sword moves. Moreover, your sword moves are weak. Are you fooling around with little Ling air again? Be careful. I'll complain to the sect leader and break your legs. The master of the non-phase peak spoke harshly, and her face was full of majesty. It was just that. There was a bit of harassment in her words. However, the one who was reprimanded also unceremoniously harassed her. What do you use to break my legs? Can a poor ghost like you afford to buy a radish? If you can't reach the 45th layer of non-phase sword before this evening, I will use your anus. Do you hear me? Chapter 372. After a year of hard work, the result was remarkable. If cultivation base from high-level shoot-on to peak shoot-on could be considered as the accumulation of several months of life and death experiential learning in the Western continent, then non-phase sword bone, non-phase sword method, and other methods leaping 10 layers in succession, could only be achieved through desperate and bitter cultivation. This year was the harshest year that Wang Lu had experienced since he came up the mountain. Although it was not as exaggerated as when he and Lu Li practiced swordsmanship, where the two of them were often seriously injured, the actual hard work was much more. Because his master's requirement was too strict, it was simply a fantasy for his non-phase sword art to advance more than 10 levels in 2 years. Initially, he spent more than a month just to reach the 3rd layer of non-phase sword art. Now that his accumulation was deeper, his progress should be slower. Not to mention that while practicing swordsmanship, non-phase sword bone, non-phase immortal heart, and so on must be carried out at the same time. And to achieve this, it was not just a matter of risking his life and using his innate vitality. Wang Lu must mobilize all of his resources. The first was medicinal pills. In this year, he had eaten all kinds of elixirs. Fortunately, his 7th uncle gave him a lot of support. However, Wang Lu himself also spent a lot of spirit stones. He spent nearly 1 million spirit stones. It was not that he didn't have them, but many of them were priceless. The second was planning. Compared to the grand goals set by his master, in these 2 years, he really had to race against time. In order to effectively use the time on one hand, Wang Lu had to carry out many tasks at the same time, and on the other hand, he had to make a reasonable plan. For example, after the routine swordsmanship practice, he would take advantage of the time to restore his physical strength and magical power to do deep meditation, and then he would practice hand seals and other fine work to hone his flexibility. At the same time, the progress of the methods must be coordinated with each other. Perhaps some methods like non-phase swordbone, because it relied more on external force, the progress was very stable. But non-phase immortal heart, which needed inspiration and perception, needed to be guided. Then there was ample rest. No bowstring could be permanently taut without breaking. Every once in a while, Wang Lu would give himself a little break. Either he would go down the mountain to harass the lady boss at the Spirit Creek town, or he would respond to Aya's invitation to help her improve her dishes, while at the same time, he would exercise his poison resistance. 1 year of time was unbelievably full. 1 year later, Wang Lu had achieved amazing results according to the progress. Non-phase sword technique and other methods had all broken through the 45th layer. His magical power was even more abundant. In his jade mansion, there was a perfectly round and translucent void core,
which contained golden light, as if it could turn into a real thing at any time, producing qualitative change. Of course, the real qualitative change still needed about half a year of preparation. At that time, according to his master's plan, he would deal with the calamity of the king pill in the most perfect manner. Once he could survive that calamity, it was likely that he would achieve the highest grade of the supreme king pill, and then she, the old lady, could use the name of the master of the supreme king pill to open all kinds of extracurricular classes to earn extra money. At first, the advertising sponsorship fee was, in fact, the advertising sponsorship fee that she used to open classes in the name of Wang Lu's master to earn extra money. Wang Lu himself was as busy as a dog, so how could he have the time to shoot advertisements? Of course, it was said that there were also a lot of advertisements, but the specific operations were all handled by Wang Wu, so Wang Lu simply had no time to take care of it. Sometimes, Wang Lu even suspected that the reason why Wang Wu, that cheap woman, arranged his practice so intensely was so that he would have no time to take care of her taking private jobs outside and illegally operating his portrait rights. However, in this intense practice, he really couldn't care about that much. Selling his portrait rights and copyright was up to her, as long as she didn't secretly sell his body. On this day, after finishing his hard practice, Wang Lu, in accordance with his original plan, prepared to go down the mountain to harass the lady boss. However, just as he arrived at the 4 Divisions peak, he saw a group of people coming through the fog array outside the mountain. Their faces were dejected, as if they were defeated soldiers. Among them, there was a familiar face, which made him happy. "Fatty, how come you also went to open up the wasteland?" Speaking of Wen Bao, in the past, he was Wang Lu's loyal subordinate. Now he has been helping to manage the trivial affairs of the wisdom sect, so their relationship has always been harmonious. However, as the gap between their cultivation base continued to increase, the opportunity to work together became less and less. Moreover, Wang Lu was diligent in his practice on the mountain, so the opportunity for the two to meet and chat in their spare time was also very few. Thus, their relationship had become slightly estranged in recent years. Unexpectedly, they actually met here. Hearing the word fatty, Wen Bao, who was riding the cloud with his several senior brothers and senior sisters, suddenly trembled like a frightened wild boar. When he looked down and saw Wang Lu waving his hand on the platform of the 4 Divisions peak, his complexion changed, and he actually wanted to cover his face and run away. Wang Lu suddenly became even happier. His feet touched the ground, and like a lightning, he appeared in front of Wen Bao, which made the fatty look even more frightened. Wang Lu looked him up and down and saw that this fatty was indeed thinner than in his impression, but he didn't seem to have suffered any vicious torture. His magical power seemed to be abundant, his corporeal body was sturdy, and there were signs of his internal and external cultivation method merging, which was the sign of advancing from the foundation establishment stage to the Shudan stage. With his aptitude and perception, this progress was quite gratifying. However, when he carefully looked at him, he found that the fatty was restless. His Tao heart swayed as if it was incomplete, as if he had suffered a great shock. With Wen Bao's simple and honest character and experience, Wang Lu suddenly became curious. What kind of experience could make his corporeal body undamaged and his Tao heart thwarted? Wen Bao was not the kind of person who cultivated in the mountains. When he was still in the Qi cultivating stage, he was caught by Wang Lu to fight against the 7-star sect, so he could be considered as experienced. If he encountered a particularly strong enemy, his corporeal body wouldn't be intact, and if it was an ordinary terrifying matter, it wouldn't scare his Tao heart. Thinking about Wen Bao's first reaction when he saw Wang Lu thought for a moment, and then he used his non-phase magical power to sweep his eyes. Suddenly he chuckled and said, "Dead fatty, you cheated. I'm going to tell junior sister you." Wen Bao immediately knelt down. "I didn't." "If you didn't, then why are you kneeling?" Wang Lu scolded. "You look like you have a guilty conscience. Are you afraid that other people can't guess it? Come on, tell me what's going on." When he dragged Wen Bao down the mountain to the Spirit Creek town, the dead fatty simply stopped at every step. Wang Lu had to pull and kick him to drive him into the hall of the Ru family inn. When he saw the lady boss, Wen Bao's legs became even more soft. As a result, without waiting for Wang Lu to urge him, Wen Bao poured out his experience in detail. It turned out that a few months ago, the Wanxian League and the excavation management had carried out several rounds of exploration of the group of immortal tombs, and began to gradually penetrate deeper into the immortal dreamland. They also expanded the scope of cultivators that were allowed to enter the immortal dreamland. The inner court disciples of the 5 uniques, the successor disciples of the several top-ranked sects, or the elite disciples approved by the sect leader could enter the immortal dreamland under the guidance of someone. And Wen Bao was the second batch of inner court disciples that were sent by the Lingjian school. Considering that the exploration of the immortal tombs was still in its initial stage, Wen Bao and the others were only allowed to complete the first 2 links. In the 3rd link they had to withdraw. And according to the early experience, as long as the first 2 links were handled properly, there would be almost no danger. As a result, after Wen Bao entered the immortal dreamland, he did not encounter any life-threatening danger. In a peaceful mountain village, he encountered a group of evil monsters. Those monsters were numerous in number, but they were just a motley crew. Wen Bao wielded the black stone sword that was specially made for him by his master and killed his way through the group of monsters. Although he wiped out the opponents, he also suffered some injuries. At this point, Wen Bao's exploration was very smooth. Although he was slightly injured, it did not hinder his action at all. Therefore, he began the 2nd round of exploration. The villagers told him that there was a demon stronghold on the mountain, and that they were just the vanguard. After calculating for a while, Wen Bao felt that his strength was enough to deal with it, so he went up the mountain alone to break into the Dragon Lake. However, the next development was completely beyond his control. Although the demon's stronghold was destroyed by Wen Bao, because he was strong in offense and weak in defense, he was injured in a moment of carelessness. The enthusiastic villagers asked him to stay in the village to recuperate. Wen Bao felt that he had plenty of time, and it was difficult to refuse their hospitality, so he agreed. But I never thought that the people in the mountain village would be so enthusiastic. Wen Bao wanted to cry but had no tears. At first, they just said that there was a healing herb in the village, and they wanted to change my dressing. But when I changed the dressing, they kept on. Before he could finish, Wang Lu has already unceremoniously laughed out loud. Ha 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 ha, I thought you had an affair with someone, but it turned out to be the illusion and puppet in the immortal dreamland. Did you, fatty, go there to seek treasure or to visit prostitutes? The lady boss also bent down in laughter. Dead fatty, I really underestimated you. Other people who go to the group of immortal tombs either have a hard time or have a hard time. Only you have a hard time, ha ha ha. Being ridiculed by the 2, Wen Bao annoyedly buried his head on the table. What should I do now? Wang Lu tried to hold back his laughter and patted Wen Bao's shoulder. Tell me first, who do you want to explain this to? Junior sister Yu or Qian Hu Na? Wen Bao mumbled for a long time, refusing to say anything. Wang Lu did not insist. 2 people have 2 different temperaments, 2 different ways to deal with it. But first of all, you must be honest and not try to hide it. Your heart's Tao is flawed. Anyone can see that you have a problem. Moreover, if you look closely, it's not difficult to find that your primordial yang is missing. The main thing is that your cultivation method has been broken. Those 2 people are not stupid. They would eventually find the problem. If junior sister Yu. Before he could finish, he heard Wen Bao softly said, the main thing is that there's a problem with Qian Hu Nav. Oh, dead fatty. Not bad. You actually managed to take down a woman with a strong temperament. Wang Lu repeatedly patted his shoulder to encourage him. If it's that Qian Hu Na, things would be simple. You just need to kneel down and admit your mistake, and then wait for your punishment. Wen Bao asked, what if she doesn't want me anymore? The lady boss spurted out on the spot. Wang Lu also looked like he expected better from Wen Bao. In any case, you're a fucking foundation-building cultivator, a descendant of the imperial family, and now an inner disciple of one of the 5 uniques. Which aspect of you isn't better than her? Isn't it shameful to look like this dog? Let's put it this way. With Li Nana's temperament, if she approves of you, it must be because she approves of your strengths and weaknesses. You have an indecisive temperament and are amenable to coaxing but not coercion, so she should be able to anticipate and tolerate the occasional mishap. What's more, the target this time is just a puppet-like thing in the dream. If it's junior sister Yu, then you're finished. Wen Bao asked in a daze, can I really? Of course, you should coax her and admit your mistake when you should. In any case, kneeling down and licking is your forte. You should fully display your forte and kneel down and lick Qian Hu Na until she's satisfied, and happy, and then your crisis will be over. Is that so? Wang Lu said, it's like this. By the way,
Do you need me to provide you with medicinal support? In the past, my master gave me a dose of elixir, so I can support you for free. After sending Wenbao away, Wang Lu fell into deep thought in the inn. Seeing that he rarely didn't speak, the lady boss curiously asked, "What are you thinking about? Why are you so concerned about Wenbao's matter?" Wang Lu waved his hand. "No, I'm just thinking that perhaps I have found the opportunity to break through the king pill." "Oh." The lady boss became even more curious. "Where is it?" Wang Lu's master wanted him to reach the peak of Shudan stage in 2 years, but not the king pill, because the king pill really needed a bit of luck, and the opportunity was hard to find. But now, Wang Lu actually said that he found it? Yes, it's in the group of immortal tombs. The lady boss was shocked on the spot. Is your opportunity to break through the king pill relying on prostitution? Chapter 373. For the lady boss, this kind of small business owner with low-class awareness, Wang Lu never expected her to have any reliable understanding. Regarding the king pill, he only needed to know about it. After returning to the non-phase peak, Wang Lu originally intended to exchange his experience with his master, but his master went out to take a private job, leaving behind a few pages of draft paper in the room, on which were written non-phase sword art, non-phase sword bone, non-phase immortal heart, and other cultivation methods. Wang Lu couldn't help but admire his master for doing this. But even more admirable was that although the draft left by his master was sloppy, he still had to look at it. Today, Wang Lu has been practicing the non-phase method for almost 15 years. He has a very deep understanding of this method, and from time to time, he would come up with innovative ideas. But most of the time, compared with his master's few drafts, his creativity was always a bit lacking, and sometimes the difference was simply like the difference between heaven and earth. Wang Lu really didn't want to admit that his IQ actually lost to Wang Wu. Therefore, after thinking about it, he could only say that when God closed a window, another window would be open for people. Considering that Wang Wu's integrity, morality, taste, heterosexual affinity, intellectual development, and so on were all sealed, it was not impossible for her to have amazing talent in some fields. After studying in the room for a while, Wang Lu was ready to rest, but suddenly, a page of talisman lit up in front of him. It was actually the summon of the sect leader. Being summoned by the sect leader, Wang Lu immediately got up and went to the stellar peak. In the sect leader's bamboo room, several elders were waiting for him with a solemn expression. This posture startled Wang Lu. In the past few years, the sect leader sometimes summoned him, but most of the time, when his master was not present, he would convey the instructions. Sometimes it was Feng Yin who consulted him on some specific issues. Wang Lu, as the lead disciple of Lingjian school, already had the right to participate in some of the sect's affairs. However, summoning with a talisman and having many elders waiting for them was relatively rare. Usually, it was a major matter that required many elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall to make decisions together. Wang Lu thought for a moment and then said, "Greetings, Uncle Master, second Uncle Master, third Uncle Master. May I ask, did you summon me here today to remove Master from his position as the 5th Elder of Heavenly Sword Hall and replace him? I know that I am not talented and have only been cultivating for a short period of time, but I will definitely do my best in the future." Before he could finish his words, he saw the elders' expressions turn blank. They knew that they had guessed wrongly. However, they soon heard the second elder, Lucien, say, "Senior brother, I feel that this matter can be discussed." The sect leader waved his hand. "Wang Lu is just joking, and you're fooling around as well. Wang Lu, I summoned you here in the middle of the night because there's an important matter. Perhaps you already know in advance that this time, the disciples of the 15 sects of the Wanxian League entered the group of immortal tombs and took a step deeper into the outermost layer. However, most of them returned in failure. Although there's no loss, it has an impact on the entire development strategy. After all, the group of immortal tombs is not a feast for a few people, but a treasure house that benefits the entire immortal cultivation world of 9 regions." Wang Lu blinked his eyes. "What's the truth?" Feng Yin was puzzled. "What's the truth?" Wang Lu froze for a moment and then somewhat incredulously asked, "Uncle Sect Leader, you don't really care about the development of the entire immortal cultivation world of 9 regions, do you? Other people can do whatever they want, but as long as our Lingjian school can survive, isn't that enough?" Feng Yin wryly smiled. "It's precisely because the result of this time's Lingjian school is not ideal.
Among the several sects, only Shungjing sect and Royal Soldier sect have gained something. As for the secret, can you expect them to share it? Wang Lu asked. That being the case, wouldn't it be better for the elders to explore the way first, and then summarize the strategy for the disciples to refer to? Precisely not. Feng Yin sighed. Speaking of which, it's indeed a pity that you haven't personally experienced the group of immortal tombs until now. If you've been there, you should know that although the general structure of the immortal dreamland is similar, the specific content varies from person to person, and the difference is very big. The experience of the elders in the immortal dreamland is completely different from that of the younger generation, so there's no reference value. For example, the younger generation is impetuous and often trapped by love in the immortal dreamland. If it were me, I would never encounter it. Wang Lu nodded. Of course, your virgin technique has reached perfection. The several elders turned their heads at the same time and hid their expression. Feng Yin Taoist master endured the embarrassment and said, in short, there are tens of thousands of immortal dreamlands in the immortal tomb, each of which is tailored for the person who enters. Each of them contains several rounds of stories, and according to the cultivator's experiential learning, all kinds of treasures are condensed. At the same time, these tens of thousands of immortal dreamlands are not completely unrelated to each other, but have a whole progressive structure. Upon hearing the overall structure, Wang Lu promptly revealed the map that he obtained from the ancient sword tomb. Among the bright stars, there were thin lines that connected the stars to form a complex network. Feng Yin nodded. The deeper one goes into the immortal dreamland of the group of immortal tombs, the higher the overall difficulty, but the greater the harvest. It also involves the inheritance of the ancestors as mentioned by the mysterious voice, as well as the responsibility that needs to be borne. However, the deep level of the immortal dreamland is not directly open. It needs to open up several different low-level immortal dreamlands to enter, which requires the cultivators of 9 regions to advance as a whole. It is impossible to fully explore the mystery of the group of immortal tombs by relying solely on the elders or the disciples. While fiddling with the map in his hand, Wang Lu suddenly said, so that's the meaning of these thin lines. Then the structure of the entire group of immortal tombs needs to be adjusted. Feng Yin Taoist master said, this time, after the disciples of the major sects suffered setbacks in their experiential learning, they have summed up their experience and lessons. Now that we have opened up the immortal dreamland, no one has gone all out, but there are still many elites. However, the progress is less than 2 or 3 thousandths of the entire group of immortal tombs, and it's already somewhat difficult to continue, which is really worrying. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu gradually understood. What's really worrying is that, while the other sects are helpless and their progress is stagnant, some sects are triumphantly advancing, right? So, the sense of crisis in your heart flared up, so you called me the strategy expert? Feng Yin said, oh, you're really smart, that's true. Right now, several of my junior brothers and I have opened up many high-level immortal dreamlands, but the low-level immortal dreamlands are still full of difficulties. And if the low-level immortal dreamlands are not broken, it would be difficult for us to continue to explore. And in order to break through this immortal dreamland, many of the younger generation of inner court disciples of Lingzhen school have been dispatched. However, not only Wen Bao, even Yu Yun, Hua Ying, these steady children have also suffered setbacks. Lu Xian bitterly smiled. As the reward-giver elder, I'm really ashamed. Feng Yin comforted him, junior brother, you don't have to blame yourself. Compared with the other sects, our results are pretty good. Shungjing sect and Royal Soldier sect dispatched their successor disciples to open up many immortal dream lands, while the other sects are not as good as us. Wang Lu said, since I have to dispatch my successor disciples, I am naturally duty-bound. So why don't we start now? Wang Lu's eagerness surprised the several elders. There's no need to be so anxious, I know your master, Wang Lu said with a smile. If you're not in a hurry, you wouldn't have summoned me in the middle of the night. Is the progress of Shungjing sect and Royal Soldier sect making you panic? The elders were silent for a while, and then Feng Yin said, according to the latest briefing I got from the Excavation Management Office, Shungjing sect's progress is the fastest. They are about to solve the first 36 chains. Only 3 chains are left. Royal Soldier sect is 1 chain behind, but their progress is more stable. Wang Lu interrupted, the so-called 36 chains, does it refer to the immortal dreamlands with 35 chains? Feng Yin stretched out his hand and pointed at the map in Wang Lu's hand. Suddenly, the vast sea of stars was magnified,
and a corner of it appeared in front of everyone. They saw a deep whirlpool, like the moon surrounded by stars, supported by 6 thin lines in the center, and these 6 lines were connected to a different number of star clusters. The 35 chains are divided into 6 lines. Among them, the elders have already opened up 3 of them, and the remaining 3 must be cleared by the disciples. At present, the progress of the 3 lines is not smooth. Wang Lu asked, "How many lines can I participate in?" "You can. Your current cultivation base and experience can be said to be the most suitable stage to explore the group of immortal tombs. Your cultivation base is not enough to reach the King Pill, and your cultivation base is less than 20 years. In the more important lines, there are almost no restrictions that can baffle you. However, if you reach the King Pill, it would be somewhat inconvenient." Wang Lu thought for a moment and then understood. If you reach the King Pill, it would be inconvenient? That is to say, in the 36 chains that we have chosen, the Heavenly Sword Hall is enough to deal with the King Pill and above. However, if it's below the King Pill, it has to be me. Are the younger generation of Lingjian school so disappointing? Second elder Lu Xian's complexion turned even more embarrassed. However, Feng Yin Taoist master explained, the setting of this group of immortal tombs is very unique. The requirements for the younger generation of cultivators are obviously more stringent. Some of the tests in the immortal dreamland are too difficult even for the elders. Shengjing sect and Royal Soldier sect are more or less lucky. Although Qianghua has the King Pill cultivation base, her cultivation time is still shallow, so she is not rejected by the immortal dreamland. We don't have such good luck. Wang Lu nodded. No wonder. Then I have to start as soon as possible. If I delay it, in case I accidentally break through the King Pill realm, no one could break this 36 chains. Our Lingjian school, as the largest shareholder of the group of immortal tombs, would be stuck instead. Feng Yin Taoist master said with a wry smile, "These 2 years should be the time for you to fully focus on your cultivation. Junior sister even specifically told me. As a result, not only we elders can't help you, we even have to interrupt your cultivation at this time. I'm really sorry." Wang Lu said with a smile, "Sect leader, don't say that. This year, the resources that the sect has provided me are so much that I'm embarrassed. Although I'm the lead disciple, the elixirs that are worth millions, as well as the various auxiliary arrays that are priceless, have far exceeded the treatment of the general lead disciple. If I don't do something for the sect, I would be sorry for the dividends that I enjoy from the excavation management and plentiful city." As soon as Wang Lu's voice fell, he heard the 6th elder Lu Li curiously asked, "Wait a minute, didn't your master tell you? The props and resources that were used to promote your cultivation base this year are all from your dividends from the excavation management and plentiful city." "Wait a minute, what did you say?" After an extremely brief shock, Wang Lu calmed down first. With her usual style, "It's not unusual. Fortunately, I've been prepared." Wang Lu muttered to himself and touched his mustard seed bag, the card that he had long prepared to guard against his master. More than 10 years ago, he used that card to travel unhindered in the small clear sky peak, but now. Chapter 374. The temporary meeting in the bamboo room of Stellar Peak lasted until early in the morning. Most of the time was used to discuss the strategy of the 36 chains, and a small part of the time was used to sort out the issue of Wang Lu's dividend authorization in Plentiful City and the excavation management. After the calculation of 6th uncle Lu Li, the amount of dividend enjoyed by Wang Lu was quite high. Whether it was the discovery of the group of immortal tombs or the acquisition of the key, almost all of them were done by Wang Lu alone. In the overall work of the group of immortal tombs, he played an irreplaceable role. Therefore, although he was a younger generation disciple and didn't even have the identity of a Taoist master, it was reasonable to say that he could not enjoy the treatment of many senior cultivators. However, under the struggle of Lingjian school, he still served as a special inspector of the excavation management, a member of the Plentiful City Management Committee, and enjoyed their respective dividend authorization. From an individual point of view, no one had a higher proportion of dividend than him. At present, because the development of the group of immortal tombs was still very preliminary, the overall strategy of the excavation management was to attract more people with cheap tickets and taxes. At present, the dividend was not obvious. However, Plentiful City had officially started its operation and obtained an extremely rich income. It could be speculated that Wang Lu's annual dividend was around 1 million spirit stones,
and the first year's auction of real estate was even more generous. However, a considerable part of it had been embezzled by someone. In this regard, Wang Lu didn't intend to pursue this matter excessively. His master was greedy for money, which he had long been accustomed to over the years. Although Wang Wu never admitted it, as early as more than 10 years ago, Wang Lu had heard from others that Wang Wu's immortal cultivation aptitude was not up to standard. Coupled with the special nature of non-phase method, the amount of energy she consumed in her immortal cultivation was unimaginable to ordinary people. In this 1 year of closed-door cultivation, he had spent more than 1 million spirit stones, which was appalling. And his master's annual cultivation consumption was probably no less than his own. Moreover, according to the general practice, Wang Lu should turn over part of the profit to his master. According to the calculation of sixth uncle, Wang Wu's share was not much different from the customary proportion. However, understanding was one thing, but he still had to deal with it. Otherwise, she would be addicted to corruption, and she would definitely do anything. This time, she had only swallowed a small portion of the dividends. Next time, she might be able to sell his personal information to those perverted rich women at a high price. Just in case, Wang Lu simply used something in his hand as a guide to leave his master's personal information and unique mark on an information display board in the middle of Plentiful City Inn. The title was Same-Sex Friends, Double Cultivation, King Pill, Beauty, Don't Bother If You're Sincere. Contact XXX. That display board was located in the center of Plentiful City, next to the entrance of the group of immortal tombs. It was one of the most densely populated areas of cultivators, a place where every inch of land was extremely expensive. The purpose of the display board was to provide an information exchange channel for those who came to Plentiful City in search of opportunities. As long as one paid a very low fee, they could post all sorts of requests and responses on the display board, such as asking for items at a high price, or seeking companions to train with, and so on. The area of the display board was not large, but with the blessing of immortal method, when the cultivators looked at it, the first thing they saw would be what they thought in their heart, or what they were anxious about in reality. The irrelevant information would be automatically excluded. Such a small display board was a privilege that Wang Lu struggled to obtain from the excavation management at the beginning of the establishment of Plentiful City, and it was refined with the assistance of the sixth elder of Heavenly Sword Hall, Lu Li. After a year of operation, through advertising fees and other value-added services, this display board, by virtue of its monopoly advantage and geographical advantage, had become a scene in Plentiful City. Its value was above that of many cities in the mortal world, truly priceless. After leaving his master's information on the display board, it only took 7 days for Wang Wu, who went out to pick up a private job, to flee back to Spirit Sword Mountain. However, when she rushed back to Non-Phase Peak, she found that Wang Lu was no longer there. "Oh, are you looking for Wang Lu? He has already gone to Plentiful City." The one who stayed in Non-Phase Peak to pass the message to Wang Lu was the sixth junior brother, Lu Li. As an elder, there was no need for him to do this for Wang Lu. It was just that before Wang Lu left, he discussed the development strategy of Lingjian School's industry in Plentiful City. The more they talked, the more they hit it off. Elder Lu Li was full of joy, so he made an exception to do some chores for Wang Lu. He looked at the distressed senior sister with a smile and asked, "This time, you were miserably played by little Lu?" Wang Wu sighed. "I can't blame Wang Lu. I reap what I sow," Lu Li curiously said. "That's strange. You actually know how to reflect on yourself?" Wang Wu explained, 2 days ago, when I was giving a private lesson to a disciple of a high-rank immortal cultivation family, I suddenly received a communication talisman. Several young girls spoke ambiguously. When I asked, I learned that they actually wanted to have some intimate relationship with me. At that time Lu Li said with a smile, "At that time, you became popular." Wang Wu said, "No, I laughed out loud at that time." "What?" Wang Wu explained, "Sixth junior brother, you, a rich man, don't understand my hard work. In the past, if I wanted to find a young girl, I don't know how much trouble it would be. If I don't spend money, it would seem that I'm not sincere. But if I want to be sincere, I have no money. Now that someone actually came to my door, how could I not be happy? Therefore, I even declined the private lesson and directly applied for it." Those girls are the younger generation disciples of Yin and Yang School. The youngest one is only a high-level qi cultivating stage cultivator.
Their sect organized them to go to Plentiful City's immortal tombs for experiential learning. Along the way, they saw a novel news on the display board, so with a curious mind, they tried to contact me. TSKSK, those girls are, after all, from famous sections. They are open-minded and knowledgeable. Moreover, each and every one of them is tender and lovely. It's really pleasant to get along with them. Alas, I was confused for a moment. I only cared about sightseeing and having fun with them. A few days later, I found out that they actually have deep feelings for me, but it was already too late. They are the elite disciples of Yin and Yang school, shouldering the heavy responsibility of becoming the pillars of the sect. Sooner or later, they would find their ideal husband, or a good furnace for long-term dual cultivation. But after they met me, they said that since then, they have lost interest in men. But for female cultivators, even mysterious Yin body has no effect on them. These past few days of joy have become a heavy obstacle in their cultivation path. Alas, whenever I think about it, I inevitably feel guilty. Luli didn't know what to say. So, after thinking about it, I decided that it's better to get the pain over with than to get it over with. So, I simply found an opportunity to escape. They are still young and have a great future. I have no future with them. Wang Wu said, sighed with melancholy, and then said with a smile, "Junior brother, do you think I'm very selfless and great now?" Luli was silent for a long time, and then sighed. "In the future, I will never meddle in the affairs of your non-phase peak." "Hey, that's right, 6th junior brother, I see that you haven't gotten married, how about, don't even think about it." With that, the 6th elder turned into a sword light and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. After Luli left, Wang Wu, who was alone in the shack, slowly hung a smile on her face. "Little Lu, do you think this is over? You offended master and still want to leave, how could it be that easy?" On the other side, Wang Lu, alone, had arrived at Plentiful City. This city, which was blessed by Taoist master Feng Yin under the name of Harvest City, had now become a famous and prosperous capital city in 9 regions. In 1 year, its development exceeded many people's expectations. On the original pattern, the city had been widened twice before it barely met the demand. At this time, the development of the group of immortal tombs was still in a very early stage, and its value in Plentiful City were far from being tapped to the limit. No one knew to what extent Plentiful City could eventually develop, but everyone knew the infinite potential of this city. Therefore, when Wang Lu arrived as a member of the Plentiful City Management Committee, he enjoyed a very grand reception. The officers sent by the committee were still secondary, but many sects that hoped to take root in Plentiful City sent a team of elders. Among them, the one with the lowest cultivation base was the Taoist master of King Pill, and even Taoist masters of Yuanying stage were not uncommon. A group of Yuanying stage King Pill surrounded a peak shoot on stage. The scene looked unspeakably strange. Wang Lu was also somewhat troubled by this, because although these Yuanying stage King Pill looked respectful, they actually thought that in the Plentiful City Management Committee, only Wang Lu was a disciple cultivator. The rest of the Yuanying and deity stage cultivators were senior, had high cultivation base, and had higher vision. The compliments of these King Pill Yuanying stage cultivators were worthless. If he wanted to use resources to smooth the relationship, the cost would be frighteningly high. In contrast, it would be much easier to win over a shoot-on stage member like Wang Lu. Being treated as a cheap product, how could Wang Lu feel good about it? Besides, he had important things to do at this time. The 36 chains that the Lingjian school was trying to solve would not wait for him. Therefore, along the way, he used all kinds of martial arts one by one to quickly send away the elders of the sects that were crowding around him in exchange for a moment of peace. Wang Lu just did it casually and did not pay much attention to it. However, the officer sent by the Plentiful City Management Committee was full of admiration. At first, when he was sent to greet and serve Wang Lu, he was very reluctant in his heart, thinking that he was a Taoist master of King Pill of a high-rank sect, but he was a follower of a shoot-on-stage disciple. But when he saw Wang Lu's cold and forceful words, for example, "This matter is not under my jurisdiction and I have no right to decide. For example, the committee must act in accordance with the law and cannot practice favoritism. For example, you guys have violated the relevant laws and regulations by contacting me in private, so you should be held accountable." Suddenly, he felt that the harvest was quite fruitful and the trip was not in vain. His impression of Wang Lu was also greatly different. While thinking,
The two of them had already arrived at the entrance of the group of immortal tombs. Squeezed in the crowd, Wang Lu pondered. However, the officer was somewhat uncomfortable, so he asked, Taoist Master Wang, is there anything else that I need to deal with? With Wang Lu's cultivation base, he could not be called a Taoist master. However, as a leading cadre of Plentiful City, the actual operation was not so strict. Wang Lu thought for a moment, copied a list and handed it over. You have more contact with practical matters here. Help me collect the information on the list and take out some tools from the Plentiful City's public warehouse. If there's a fee, just put it on the account of the committee. Yes, I know. The officer took the list and then turned around to leave. Wang Lu continued to think. He was thinking about the development of the immortal dreamland. Previously, when he heard Wen Bao's self-narration on the mountain, he was so amused that he burst out laughing. But the problem was, now it was his turn to solve that link. The problem with Wen Bao was that he couldn't withstand the temptation. After a night of pleasure with the enchanting and passionate village girls, there was no next link in the story, so he had to quit. However, the problem was, later on, Yu Yun also tried it once and withstood the temptation. However, the village girls thought that he was dull and boring, and the story was too short. Now it was Wang Lu's turn to tackle this link. So how should he start? While he was thinking about it, he suddenly heard a group of orioles around him. Senior sister, do you think it's him? It looks like him. While speaking, Wang Lu's shoulder was patted. A young girl tenderly smiled and said, Hello, are you Wang Lu, a disciple of Spirit Sword Mountain's non-phase peak? Chapter 375. When Wang Lu was thinking with his head down, he was suddenly interrupted and felt a little unhappy. When he turned around and saw the girl smiling like a flower, he felt even more unhappy. With his current cultivation and experience, he could see through those cultivators with shallow cultivation at a glance. The girl behind him seemed to be 22 or 23, 1 or 2 years younger than him. Her cultivation was only at the foundation establishment stage, but her foundation was very deep. Once she entered the Shudan stage, from the Shudan stage to the King Pill was almost natural. She was obviously a cultivator from a famous sect. Judging from her aura and other details, she should be a disciple of the Yin and Yang sect. Although this sect did not do anything evil, its reputation was really ordinary. Its disciples were lively and open-minded. Or rather, they were famous for their debauchery. Many young cultivators, in order to quickly improve their cultivation, would go all out in pursuit of a furnace that caught their eye. They would even do anything just for one night of pleasure. Fortunately, the Yin and Yang sect's dual cultivation method focused on the harmony of Yin and Yang. It was good for both oneself and others. Otherwise, it would be completely the style of an evil sect. However, it was not uncommon for the Yin and Yang sect's disciples to cause conflicts in marriage, so its reputation was very ordinary. Wang Lu did not reject or dislike these passionate girls. After all, everyone had their own aspirations. The Yin and Yang sect's girls did not mean to harm others. On the contrary, for so many years, many nerds who were destined to live a lonely life were able to experience the joy of dual cultivation because of the Yin and Yang sect's girls. Speaking of which, the Yin and Yang sect was really a great merit. But how could he be in the mood to play dual cultivation with these young girls? He was too busy with his own matters. However, when the girls became passionate, it was not up to him. As soon as Wang Lu tilted his head, the girls began to chatter again. Haha, it's really him, it's really him. It's exactly the same as what he said. He's really handsome, but I don't know if it's true that he has a big tool and is good at living? Sister Lon, you can go and try him. TSK, Ying Tao, why don't you try? When Sister Wu said she had a disciple, you were the first one to smile through your tears. I didn't smile. The one who smiled was Wan Er. Ying Tao, you're talking nonsense. Humph, if you can't wait, we'll let you go first. The sisters will understand. These chattering sounds were similar to white noise, and Wang Lu's non-phase immortal heart could completely block them out. However, in the midst of the noise, he keenly captured a point. Sister Wu? As a female name, the word Wu was quite common, but at this moment, when it was mentioned, Wang Lu could only think of one person. Are you the reinforcements Wang Wu invited? Hearing Wang Lu's question, the girls became even more excited. Wow, your voice is really good.
Sister Wu and He Wu are indeed master and disciple. Their tone is also handsome. Are you the reinforcements Wang Wu asked for? How can you be so handsome? I want to dual cultivate with him. Wow, Wan Er, you have some integrity. When Sister Wu left, you were the first to say that you had no interest in men, but now you want to dual cultivate with him. Humph, he is Sister Wu's disciple. How can he be like other men? He has Sister Wu's inheritance. Dual cultivating with him is the same as dual cultivating with Sister Wu. What Wan Er said makes sense. As long as you call Sister Wu's name when you dual cultivate with him, it is the same as dual cultivating with Sister Wu. That's right, as long as you don't treat him as a man. On the side, Wang Lu's hair stood on end as he listened. Which pit did Master dig out these 4 clowns from? He had seen strange people, but such strange people were really rare. Sure enough, people who have been in contact with Master will be affected by her poisonous aura? Seeing that Wang Lu was silent for a while, the girls began to talk again. He doesn't like to talk. He is different from Sister Wu. But he is quite cool. But it's boring to not talk all the time. Humph, anyway, I don't expect him to replace Sister Wu. As long as there is someone who can help with dual cultivation. That's right, if our cultivation can keep up, Sister Wu won't refuse us. Unfortunately, he is only one. How are the 4 of us going to divide him? Of course, Sister Lan should be the first. Now that she is about to advance to shoot on stage, she needs the assistance of dual cultivation the most. I don't need it. Let Celadone go first. Her cultivation time is the shortest, and the first dual cultivation is the most significant for her. Enough. Wang Lu faintly opened his mouth and used his non-phase magical power to stimulate his voice, which immediately suppressed the noise of several Yin and Yang sect female cultivators. Wow, the magical power is so pure, I said enough. This time, the girls simply felt a faint but irresistible force pressing down on them, which made them immediately shut up. Wang Lu looked at this group of naive and enthusiastic female cultivators, and he didn't even have the strength to curse them. After all, the root of all this was the message he left on the display board. He just didn't expect his master's luck to be so good. Not only did he not encounter those perverted idiots who disguised themselves as women, but he also encountered such a group of excellent girls. Being entangled by such a group of girls, Wang Lu did not intend to treat them rudely. At worst, he would find that officer just now. What was his name again? Yi Xiaolu? Come and get rid of them. However, just as he was about to call Yi Xiaolu to prepare the list, a light flashed in Wang Lu's mind. His eyes once again turned back to the female cultivators, and a smile appeared on his face. Introduce yourselves. I am Tian Dao Lan. I am Ying Tao. I am Li Qingzi. I am Lin Wan. The 4 female cultivators spoke in unison, anxiously and quickly. Fortunately, Wang Lu was able to distinguish and remember them one by one. Among them, Tian Dao Lan was the senior sister among the 4. Thus Wang Lu identified her and said, "What did Wang Wu tell you to look for me for?" Tian Dao Lan said, "She didn't explain, she just asked us to come to you, saying that when we see you, we will naturally know what to do." Lin Wan interrupted, "I guess it's for dual cultivation." Ying Tao and Qingzi were also eager to give it a try. Wang Lu knew that if these 4 people continued to talk, a few days and nights would not be enough. Thus, he waved his hand to interrupt them. "Since she asked you to come to me, then you should listen to my arrangement." He said these words casually, thinking that the other party would argue with him. Unexpectedly, Tian Dao Lan directly nodded her head. "Very well, we will listen to you. We will do whatever you want us to do." Wang Lu was completely convinced by these 4 Yin and Yang schoolgirls. In any case, they were the disciples that their master could send out for experiential learning, but how could they not use their brains to speak and do things? They just casually ran away with strangers. How could those human traffickers who painstakingly abduct and sell human beings? Wrong. How could those sect elders who painstakingly cultivate you feel? Or could it be that in just a few days, these supposedly smart and capable girls have been trained by their master into slaves without the ability to think normally? Tisday. Did that fellow Wang Wu have such means? This was strange. If she was really that powerful, she should have already set up a training center and become the queen. How could she be so poor until today? However, there was no harm in leaving, so he gladly accepted it. Wang Lu then said, "Later on, I'm going to explore the group of immortal tombs. You guys come with me. Explore the group of immortal tombs? Tian Dao Lan was surprised for a moment, but then she happily nodded. Okay, in any case, we are going to explore the group of immortal tombs, so it's even better to have you, the lead disciple of one of the 5 uniques. Wait a minute. You mean, you want all of us to go with you? But, wouldn't that make the difficulty of the immortal dreamland greatly increased? Right now, it had been a year since the opening of the group of immortal tombs. The information about it had already spread in 9 regions, and some of the basic rules were deeply rooted in people's hearts. For example, the immortal dreamland currently advocated solo clearing, because the more people there were, the more changes there would be in the immortal dreamland. More importantly, the strength of the enemy would also greatly increase. Originally, a high-level foundation establishment cultivator would at most encounter a low-level Shudan opponent. However, if a team of 5 high-level foundation establishment cultivators was formed, then it was possible for them to encounter a high-level Shudan or even a peak Shudan. And there was a big stage gap between them. Unless it was an elite disciple of one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, an ordinary cultivator would absolutely not be able to cross it. However, the situation that Wang Lu had to face was even worse. He, a peak Shudan, had to explore with 4 foundation establishment and Qi cultivating stage teammates. The immortal dreamland would not consider the uneven strength of the team and how to balance the difficulty. Basically, the immortal dreamland would only strengthen the content according to the standard of peak Shudan multiplied by 5. When the time came, perhaps even Shudan and King Pill, which was like a natural moat, would not be able to stop the difficulty from increasing. Encountering a King Pill level opponent was almost a done deal. And once there was a King Pill level opponent, not to mention clearing the stage, it was feared that the small lives of these young girls would be difficult to protect. At this time, Wang Lu just happened to see plentiful city committee officer Yi Xiaolu, who was holding a few packages, rushing over. He waved his hand to greet him and casually said to Tian Dao Lan and the others, "It doesn't matter, the King Pill is the King Pill. Even if it's a Yuanying stage opponent, as long as it's a low-level cultivator and not an elite cultivator, I can deal with it." After he finished speaking, he realized that it would be difficult to win people's trust. As a result, the next moment, he was stunned by Tian Dao Lan and the others. So powerful. It doesn't matter, the King Pill is the King Pill. How can he be so handsome? He's really worthy to be Sister Wu's disciple. I want to give him a child. No one can stop me. Wang Lu had been on the road for more than 10 years. What kind of wind and waves had he not seen? At this time, he felt that everything before his eyes had turned dark. Inwardly, he began to ponder about the pros and cons of taking these 4 strange flowers with him. However, he immediately thought that if he teamed up with these 4 people, the average IQ of the team should be able to get the care of the group of immortal tombs. At this time, Yi Xiaolu also ran over and eagerly said, "Taoist Master Wang, I have prepared all the things that you want." "Hey, are these your friends?" As the Taoist master of King Pill, Yi Xiaolu's eyesight was not bad. With one glance, he saw that Tian Dao Lan and the others came from Yin and Yang school. Immediately, he silently criticized Wang Lu, thinking that a leader was indeed a leader. Although he was young and his cultivation time was less than 1/3 of his own, this leader's manner was like real gold. If he didn't mess around with women, what kind of leader was he? Wang Lu didn't explain much. "Then I will bring them in. You go and help me register them." Are you leaving already?" Yi Xiaolu was surprised. On the other side of the committee, there were many middle-level leaders who had prepared a meal to entertain them, who knew that Wang Lu was not willing to delay even for a moment. After he finished explaining the matter, he directly waved his hand and said goodbye. Without looking back, he brought the 4 young girls into the group of immortal tombs. Chapter 376. Entering the group of immortal tombs through the gate, they were greeted by a bright galaxy. Countless clusters of nebulae surrounded Wang Lu and his team, and the starlight changed unpredictably. This was the first time for Wang Lu to personally enter the group of immortal tombs. Before this, although he could be said to be the person who had the deepest involvement with the group of immortal tombs in 9 regions, he had never personally come here. Witnessing the spectacle before him, despite how knowledgeable Wang Lu was, his heart was greatly shocked. This supreme treasure house created by the Dixian faintly exuded the majesty of tens of thousands of years of inheritance.
And as the person who truly opened this group of immortal tombs, Wang Lu even faintly felt that there was something in the depths of the galaxy that was calling him to go. Perhaps it was not an illusion? Because from the moment they stepped through the gate, they were assigned to an independent space. This was also the treatment that all the cultivators who entered the group of immortal tombs would enjoy. The group of immortal tombs would not gather tens of thousands of people in one place, but rather, they would be separated and sent to a stable space, where they could choose their own starting point. Each cluster of nebulae was an independent immortal dreamland, which was tailored according to the situation of the experiential learning user, but each was different. It was just that, it was very difficult to find the pattern by relying on the naked eye from the outside, and one had to go deep into it. If there was no special skill, the exploration of the group of immortal tombs was likely to be like a blind man touching an elephant. However, for those who had already obtained the map of the group of immortal tombs, this bright galaxy was not so mysterious. In fact, if not, Lingjian School would not have been able to find the 36 chains of immortal dreamland so quickly. Although the progress was now behind that of Shengjing sect and Royal Soldier sect, part of the reason was that the 36 chains chosen by Lingjian School were of higher quality. After standing in the galaxy for a while, Wang Lu swept his eyes and saw that Tian Dao Lan and the others were still immersed in the spectacle of the galaxy, unable to extricate themselves. Without saying much, he took out a copper coin from his mustard seed bag. The next moment, the galaxy rotated, and in the exclamation of Tian Dao Lan and the others, a cluster of nebulae rapidly expanded and quickly covered their field of vision. This was a method of using a specific token to lock a specific nebula. As long as one had previously entered a certain immortal dreamland and then brought out one or two things from it, one could trace it back and relock its position. What Wang Lu was holding was one of the coins that Wen Bao had obtained from the mountain village. Everyone saw a mysterious nebula rushing towards them, and the next moment, the galaxy and universe disappeared in front of them, replaced by a beautiful scene of verdant hills and clear waters, birdsong and fragrant flowers. However, before he could enjoy the scenery, he heard a series of battle cries. Before him, a group of demons and ghosts wielding demon-headed sabers, wolf-tooth clubs, and other weapons were charging towards him on a black cloud. Shrouded in the dark clouds, there was a lonely little village that relied on an ancient formation that had been passed down for many years. It was like a lonely boat in the storm, drifting in the wind and rain. Wang Lu thought that the progress of this instance was very fast. There was not even a moment of foreplay before it went straight to the climax. Looking at the situation in front of him, the small village's formation would only last for a cup of tea's time. And after the formation was broken, relying on the group of enthusiastic and unrestrained village girls, unless they had invincible tenacity, they could squeeze the thousands of demon soldiers and demon generals until their kidneys failed and they died. Otherwise, only death awaited them. Wow, where is this place? Sister Lan, look, there is a small village over there, and it seems very dangerous. The girl had just opened her mouth when Wang Lu impatiently interrupted her. Okay, stop chattering, come with me to save them. As Wang Lu spoke, he was ready to use his movement technique to rush forward. The several girls were shocked. Senior brother, look carefully, there are thousands of monsters, and their strength is not small. Wang Lu sneered. There is not even a single one at the king pill level. How is it not small? As he spoke, he shook a rope. The rope was like a spirit snake, nimbly turning in the air. One end was tied to the slender waists of the four girls, and the other end was held in Wang Lu's hand. With the rope coiled around their bodies, the girls suddenly felt that their limbs and bones were suddenly filled with strength. Their steps were as if they were riding on a cloud. Obviously, their cultivation base was far lower than Wang Lu's, but they could barely keep up with his speed. In the blink of an eye, they had crossed 2 mountains and arrived outside the small mountain village that was covered in dark clouds. This is a tracking rope. Wang Lu simply explained. You guys follow me closely, don't move. As soon as his voice fell, they heard a roar in the air. Where did this reckless thing come from? It turned out that although this group of monsters was just a puppet illusion in the immortal dreamland, they also had the ability to think. Seeing that Wang Lu's cultivation was not weak and he was also young, he most likely had an extraordinary background. Therefore, before they started to kill, they restrained their temper and asked one more question. Wang Lu did not intend to waste his breath with these miscellaneous soldiers. He directly pointed his middle finger to the sky and opened the curtain of the battle. The monsters in the sky were furious. Although they were a little cautious,
They were confident in their numbers. Among these monsters, there were dozens of them who had refined inner dawn, so how could they put a shoot-on-stage cultivator in their eyes? Asking him a question showed that they thought highly of him. Since he was reckless, then they would just kill him. Several demon soldiers, who had already cultivated into human form, shouted in unison. They raised their various weapons and launched their demonic techniques. Suddenly, lightning flashed and thunder rolled in the dark clouds in the sky, creating a demonic fire and demonic wind, which was very threatening. Tiandao Lan and the other girls were so scared that their faces turned pale. Although they came from a famous sect, after all, their cultivation was shallow. At most, they were only at the foundation establishment stage. This group of monsters with inner dawn, even if the four of them joined forces, they could barely deal with one, but the number of monsters in front of them was more than 30 to 50. Just the monstrous demonic flame of the group of monsters made it difficult for the four of them to breathe. Their magical power stagnated and they could no longer operate it as they wished. However, the next moment, Wang Lu gently unsheathed the sword of Mount Kuen, and the gentle and pure sword qi separated them from the rest of the world. Within the scope of the sword qi, all the demonic energy and demonic techniques disappeared. The lightning and demonic fire fell from the sky. As if they had hit an invisible barrier, they collapsed and disintegrated within a radius of 300 meters from Wang Lu. And as Wang Lu took a step forward, all the spells that hit the barrier were bounced back. The several monsters who took the lead screamed in unison. Some of them were burned by the demonic fire, and their 7 orifices spurted out fire before their bodies turned into ashes. Some of their arms that were holding their weapons had their bones and muscles broken into pieces, turning into a pile of mud. There were also some with electric snakes on their bodies, and the energy of the thunderstorm wreaked havoc inside and outside of their bodies. In just one step, the corpses of several monsters fell from the sky. Moreover, they were the elites among the monsters who could serve as the vanguard, which immediately shocked everyone present. The 4 yin and yang schoolgirls were so shocked that they didn't even have the time to give birth. The dark clouds in the sky retreated a few steps, and the small monsters at the end of the dark clouds also retreated slowly, unwilling to move. In the village, there was a burst of soft cheers. On the wall outside the village, a beautiful young woman who looked 28 or 29 years old shouted at Wang Lu. "Warrior, please come in quickly. There is a magic formation left by the ancestors in the village. If you manage it, it will definitely, however." Wang Lu waved his hand. "No need." As he spoke, his eyes swept over the dark clouds above his head. Those monsters had different thoughts. Some were eager to try, obviously very confident in their own abilities. The tragic death of their companions didn't ring the alarm bell at all. Some looked hesitant. They were weighing whether Wang Lu's sword strike just now was just a casual strike, or a full-strength strike. If it was the former, it would naturally be better to retreat. If it was the latter, they didn't need to be afraid of him since they had the advantage in numbers. Of course, there were also some who were really frightened by the scene just now and really didn't want to be enemies with this person. Seeing this scene, Wang Lu smiled and then said in a clear voice, "Your king is an idiot." According to the map in his hand, as well as what Wen Bao and the others had seen and heard, Wang Lu had a general grasp of this trial before he entered the immortal dream. The cultivation of the monsters might be strengthened or weakened by the trial taker who entered the immortal dream, but their thinking patterns were traceable. The simplest one was, be loyal to the leader. So, as soon as Wang Lu said this, the dark clouds above his head suddenly became violent. The demons and ghosts who originally had a slight intention to retreat began to clamor in unison, their anger difficult to quell. Among them, the vanguard was even more furious. He directly released his demon techniques and summoned the Yin wind and ghost howls. It was unknown how many ghosts and resentful spirits became their weapons to commit crimes. The ghostly qi was dense, sinister and vicious. Then, the group of demons worked together, and under the blessing of the dark clouds, their power doubled. The Yin ghost qi impressively underwent a qualitative change, and the aura of a living being brewed within the group of ghosts. These ghosts were reborn from the dead, and their power was comparable to that of a king pill cultivator. Senior apprentice Brother Wang. Let's quickly go in. This is already a king pill level attack, we can't resist it. However, Tiandao Lan's words were only halfway through, when the released malicious ghosts had already rushed over. Tiandao Lan closed her eyes, not daring to look again, but her eyelids still slightly opened. The next moment, under Wang Lu's infinite sword qi,
all the ghosts and demons had nowhere to hide. The expelled malicious ghosts collided with the sword Qi, and as if they had touched the innate yang aura Qi, they screamed pitifully and collapsed, and the gathered Yin energy vanished into thin air. The whistling cold wind came to an abrupt stop, and the rolling dead branches and leaves fell straight to the ground. The change of movement was so fast that it made people's hair stand on end. And at the same time that all the attacks were offset, those evildoers who cast the spell also suffered the same kind of backlash. As Wang Lu took another step forward, the group of demons screamed and fell down one after another. This round of death was even more. More than 10 monsters with Inner Dawn died because of their own unique skill. And after these elites were removed, the dark clouds that were created by the group of demons suddenly faded by half. The might of this step had reached this point. Not to mention the demons and ghosts in the sky. Even the villagers who were cheering in the village were shocked and shut their mouths. They felt that everything in front of them was so unbelievable. Although these demons and ghosts with the whistling black wind seemed to be a mob, they were actually a nightmare that had troubled the villagers for many years. If not for the array left by the ancestors, they would have been ravaged many times. Unexpectedly, under the sword of this young cultivator, they were actually so vulnerable. No, the young cultivator didn't even use his sword. It was as if his imposing manner alone was enough to behead this group of demons. As for Wang Lu himself, he just took a deep breath to calm the slight turbulence in his jade mansion. The non-phase nameless sword, exchanging blood for blood, exchanging injury for injury. When Wang Lu used his sword, he first used his own strength to withstand the full output of the group of demons. Even if it was Taoist Master King Pill who relied on his jade mansion to withstand the 2 rounds of damage, it would still be a dead end. However, in Wang Lu's eyes, he felt that his long health bar seemed to have only slightly decreased, and then with the circulation of his magical power, it was quickly restored to full. And the strength of his counterattack actually caused the group of demons to die tragically on the spot. The focus of this round is really not the battle. With a few understated words, he completely erased the hard work of Wen Bao, Yu Yun, and the others who came here for experiential learning in the previous rounds of battle. As Wang Lu said that, he turned his head and saw the beautiful village girl on the village wall looking straight at him. Her face was like a peach blossom, and her beautiful eyes were full of emotion. Then, the girls of the Yin and Yang school around him also had stars in their eyes, as if they were intoxicated. I can't wait to see the scene of their heavenly thunder and earthly fire. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.